Okay. All right, everybody. Calling this meeting of the Bethel Local School Board to order on March 1st, 2022 at 5:31 p.m. Mrs. Hageman, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Sebastian,
Yes.
Mr. Elam,
Here.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Here.
Mrs. Donahue, here, Mrs. France.
Okay, our first item on the agenda is a meeting with our township trustees. Before we get too far, I do want to note that with the board's permission, we would like to move the meeting with Great Lakes to talk about the drug testing up after the trustee meeting, if everyone is okay with that, simply so that that gentleman doesn't need to stay all evening through our business.
Sure.
Are there any objections? Okay, so we'll meet with the trustees and then we'll speak with Great Lakes about that agenda item, which was agenda item, superintendent item 6A. Mr. Perks?
Yeah.
Okay. With the 6A after 1C. Everybody okay? Awesome, thank you so much. So that puts us at item 1C, our joint Bethel Board of Education and Bethel Township Trustee meeting. Welcome, Township
Thank you.
Trustees.
Great to be here.
So we have Mrs. Van Haren, we have Mr. Black, and we have Mrs. Reese in attendance with us this evening. You are not on camera, so lucky you.
I slid back, so I would not be on camera.
Andy, welcome, welcome. Oh, Andy Earhart. Hi, Andy, all the way back there. How are you? I don't blame you. Okay, and I don't see anyone else, right? Where was that?
Yep.
I was gonna, I thought.
No,
that was on
Debbie
the
can't,
invitation.
couldn't make it. Our fiscal officer couldn't make it. No.
Okay, great. Just making sure that not missing anybody else. I know that Mrs. Reese, you had sent an agenda wanting to talk about levies, and we wanted to talk about annexation clearly.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. So who wants to start?
Well, and the township building a firehouse future. Andy, are you speaking for us?
If you'd like to.
It's like me.
I'll stand up here at the corner. Hi, thanks for having us tonight. So we just finished up a trustee retreat session last week on Wednesday. Had a few bullet points that came up out of that was very pertinent for the time moving into kind of a joint meeting with you guys. Thank you, Julie, for setting that up. So several items came up. It was kind of like trying to figure out where you know, your levies are and which levies you got coming up, so we can kind of make sure where our levies are, and so we're just not gonna inundating everybody at the same time or different times. But we didn't know what levies you guys had coming up since November, if you thought about it that far or anything else. We have our 3.8 mil levy up for on the ballot this year. That's our general operating levy that works on a bunch of different things. We've used it for infrastructure, we've used it for some operating expenses, we've used it for general kind of fighting annexation along the way. We passed it back in 2003 and it's been renewed several times. So that's going to be the ballot we have coming up this November. Excuse me. Outside of that, we also had a discussion about a new fire station / government center. We've been looking for multiple locations for that. We've had talks with several property owners, kind of in that US 40 corridor. One of the areas that we thought about was potential talking with you guys and maybe plant a seed about kind of where your baseball field is. I know that that's maybe an idea of sometime getting it back onto the normal campus as far as that goes. I think it's been looked at in the past. So that was just something to kind of plant the seed to see if there was any interest at all in something like that. Obviously, we'd be willing to throw some a hefty monetary part that way. Maybe that can help with ball fields or baseball. I know they're expensive, so that's one of the things that limits you guys with this cost. But that's not talking about the soccer field so much because I know that those are used by base and everything else, but that's about 7 acres where if you go all the way back from Palmer and 40 all the way back to where the creek is, which would serve our needs. So maybe that's something we can talk about in the future, but we did kind of plant that seed with you guys. And then what was the other one, Julie?
Can we ask a question about that? Did you have any desire to move those here?
I think it's long, right? We discussed it. I don't think it's anything concrete yet, but we've definitely discussed it as part of our long range plans to move to this.
Cost is the biggest driving factor.
Right.
Do you have an idea of the cost?
I can tell you the cost to build a pretty standard basic baseball field 10 years ago was 300,000. I'm sure that's probably double.
Yeah.
And that's just talking about basic dugouts and fencing and nothing fancy.
Yeah, I had called, I used to coach softball for Operation Mini New softball field built when my daughter was a junior, so that was in 6 years ago. And the cost for that was between $300,000 and $400,000, including some basic, I mean, they were cinder block type dugouts.
Yeah,
And
it wasn't brick or anything fancy.
No, it was just a standard, baseball or softball fields. The only thing that really starts increasing the cost is a little bit of more field wise, baseball field over that. So probably somewhere in that, 400 plus range.
We'll get a better idea of their fencing costs. for-
We'd like you to think about that, because I know a guy that could build them for free. As far as the,
Is that my favorite word, Dawn?
and for the stuff that costs money, the township was willing to take some money in return if we could get that corner of property. That's what he's telling me.
Yeah, that was the brainstorming kind of thing is, why don't we see if there's any interest and maybe we could work something out in the future. So.
I'm gonna retire in a couple of years, so you can't take it forever.
I did go back and look at the, surveys when 11 Porter did those estimates, and theirs was 3.5 to 375 at home. So just to get an idea.
Yeah, our fencing folks will be coming in on the stadium soon and I'll give us an idea about fencing.
Sure, yeah.
That might be though.
Like I said, there's something to think about as we're moving through there. We're obviously just in the kind of land acquisition phase, so we're not. We have to beat Don's retirement in a couple of years, but other than that.
I'm sorry, I didn't pipe in because I was expecting hugs and didn't get anything.
Okay, so another thing I had mentioned was, and this, again, not saying doing anything, but once the kids move out of the current elementaries, then the playground won't be needed, so he was saying they need 6 to 10 workers. So I was thinking maybe that south end could be another possibility, which would bring the school and the township and everything together, and if they're, so they had mentioned a community center, and when I was here, we had talked about a community center, so maybe pooling some resources could help get a bigger community center, maybe the old school could be, I don't know, it was just an idea, so it's just something else to,
One of the desires at the township level, and I think, speaking with the school at different times is, we are an aging community. Our newest census data came out, which I think, we're up again in our average age of years. So, there's really no senior resources that are kind of floating around, or even spots for the community. I mean, if the community wants to do something, they're only buys the apples to kind of come to school. That's the only big place that, is big enough for some sort of community events and everything else. For those of you who came, when we've done our land use meetings, we've had to utilize our fire station, empty out all the trucks and sit in there, and when it's in the winter time, it's pretty cold. So we've identified the need to have some larger area for meeting spaces and seating spaces, so kind of a multi-purpose type area, along with, some fire station needs. Our fire station looks pretty good, and we wouldn't just demo it, we would turn that into our road department building. And that little building, if you're familiar with it, sits out front, it is falling down, that's where the road department currently is, so we would be able to repurpose our existing fire station to house all of our road department equipment inside of that. So just kind of give you an idea of what we've talked about, looking down the road.
I like the idea of the locations. I mean, they're central.
Yes,
My only concern, and this is just because I know we have baseball parents that are in youth programs like fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth grade. And if we move that field over here, I imagine the younger kids would use it for baseball. Obviously, the pitching mound would have to change and stuff like that. So as long as that detail could be worked out, I mean, I don't want to shortchange them because I think the township was putting in softball fields.
softball field. the
Hopefully
Friendship
that'll
Park,
be done
which is kind
sometime. I know COVID kind of goofed all that up, but
COVID goofed that up.
I just know in my 7 years on the board, I think there's been 3 different parents like, why don't we have fields like Kyle Park? Well, we're not a city. So, I know there's the interest and the need if we could provide them. And obviously the school doesn't necessarily provide for the sports per se, but we'd like to have
Have a helping hand along with that.
Dual
Absolutely.
use,
I'm sorry?
a dual use, like the community could use it and the school, yes.
I just want to mention that, so.
Absolutely.
And Justin had a bunch of ideas about community center. Not just seniors.
Yeah,
correct.
So,
Yeah, we do get, I had a couple of emails this year inquiring about youth fields for little girls softball and little league baseball. There's definitely a need for a lot of different things in the community, from center to retirement. I don't want to say retirement center, but some sort of services for retired folks, to youth ball fields.
The whole spectrum. you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
So we're trying to think that way as a township, and it sounds like you're trying to think that way as a school board, so I think in the future, as long as we can keep putting our heads together and, not wasting efforts in one place or another, instead of buying efforts to, try and move forward. We might get around and say, and then that would really be nice to do, we can only go this far, and you can only go this far, but together we can go even far.
Right.
So I think that's super important. So. Yeah, so annexation update, we got served the new annexation, from Beaver Heights yesterday. Not only with the original acreage, but some additional acreage, so that's back on the table again. There's been a lot of talk about annexation for a parcel up on New Carlisle Road from New Carlisle. Nothing has officially been filed on that yet, but I have a meeting Thursday to talk with the city manager of New Carlisle. I'll know more then about where that is in the process and where it's going. For right now, I just had an initial phone conversation with them where we talked about services and everything to that area. So that's early on in the process. The only problem with that area, we have no water and sewer capacity up there whatsoever. Unfortunately, the city of New Carlisle does. And they have their own water and sewer, so it's not like we could even get the Clark County water and sewer to come through there to service that area that we're currently doing with ours. So we're pretty much against a rock and a hard place there, because that only place they can get that water and sewer is from New Carlisle. But I'll know more about that after Thursday. That's as far as we know. There's, like I said, nothing been filed yet. We just know that the initial plan was like 290 homes on 115 acres, which is a very dense development, and probably a third of those acres are unusable because of the giant hill that runs down the Silver. Excuse me.
And is
So-
that 3 different farms? It was a big farm. and-
It's all one farm. It just has 2 legs that come down
Okay.
on the south side of New Carlisle Road. It's all one property, just kind of weird things on the south side.
And how many acres was the proposed Huber annexation, Andy?
260,
Yeah.
What
So
do you
it went
say?
up from like-
it's 260,
Yeah.
260.
It's 260
It was
now.
230.
It was 232,
233, they added a 27 acre parcel.
And did they have an estimate on
That's
the
a big
homes?
jump. And
On the what?
Did they give an estimate on the homes yet?
Nope,
But a lot.
a lot. If it follows the same path as the original Carriage Trail, then yes, it would be a lot. And we're not even sure what that product would be, whether that's more of the apartments, more of the condos. I know the condos were a very hot seller down there. But everything's been a pretty hot seller as far as that. So
Last conversation we had with the developer, which was obviously before there was, but they put in their plans, was that it was gonna be more of single family type homes and retirement type residential areas,
Sure.
because they felt like those were the ones that were selling quicker.
Yeah.
But that could have changed with the delay and
you
everything.
never know. I mean, that's the market product, whatever they feel is hot. we're gonna do.
They also indicated they'd be willing to help us do it on campus too.
Oh, really?
We'll see.
Okay.
One thing I know we've talked about at the county commission meetings is the possibility of putting solar farms in, because that's a way you can potentially slow some of the development. I don't know what all the rules are, but it's just an idea to throw out there. If a landowner would be interested, that might be a way to get some profit without doing additional development. So just throw
That was
it.
on the news
It's
this
on our
morning.
list.
I'm sorry?
That was on the news this morning.
Yeah, and actually the state of Ohio just came out with new guidelines for solar farms
Yep.
in October. Just, there's a more definitive process that you have to go through, but it's doable.
I don't think the county's at this point adopted anything, but I know they have a employee on it. So
Right.
hopefully in the next meeting or two, there'll be more guidance. But I just wanted to mention that. I know you guys are all probably aware of it.
We thought it was solar farm. How
So those were kind of the discussion points we wanted to, to bring your way as far as that goes. And just kind of give you some thoughts that came out as a result of our meetings and just let you know that, we're going to continue to have these, I think, maybe quarterly or whatever. So food for thought on our side, and we'll be anxious to hear, food for thought on what's on your side. Yeah.
Because one thing with the annexations, you guys need to figure out what you want to ask for from that. Because we had talked before about getting land in the neighborhood, but possibly build like it's okay through something school, neighborhood. Maybe it could be that. So it could something, some character at 1.0.
Last conversation, because of what, now you need to understand, this is all conversations that took place prior to the delay in the process. Because he had indicated, excuse me, because he'd indicated it was gonna be more of single family and maybe retirement type, I guess, apartments or whatever you want to call those. They weren't really looking at putting a school down there because of that reason, and that's why he offered to help with the baseball field on campus. But I don't know what his plans are. That was,
And when you say single family, Mr. Birch, you're talking about those newer, smaller, 2-bedroom ranch homes.
Yeah.
Not the 2-story. And
Yeah, when I say
like
single family,
traditional
legitimately
trails you think of.
either recent empty nesters or folks that are of retirement age.
Those newer ones that are going in closer to 202. they're
And
really
he also
small.
made it sound like they were gonna put in a
Patio homes
retirement,
is a better word
a
for it.
retirement apartment center because they needed more of those. But I don't know, that could have all changed. That was 5 or 6
Yeah.
months ago. But he kind of said because of that reason, he didn't think it'd be as attractive to put a school in that neighborhood with older type residents. They don't know if they would go for that.
Sure.
So, I don't know. We could definitely reach out to him again. I don't know where they're at in that process either.
Yeah, I mean, it's all up to what plans get submitted at what point in time and it's trying to do it. And even with Fair Trail, things have been kind of done differently as each section's been developed, so as that product changes for their needs.
And I'm sure he knows, right? It's just the sharing part, will he share?
He did it our last meeting, but like I said, that was before everything was delayed and stopped and.
Yeah.
And that could have all changed. I mean, he could have revamped the whole plan and had a different,
Right, that's what I'm saying, he shared the new one.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Does that 27 extra acres make a difference? Like, we don't
Yeah,
know.
are they still willing to help us build a baseball field on campus? I don't know. No idea. That was probably a meeting a month before everything was put to a stop.
But it's worth reaching out
Sure.
to see now that he's actually filed again.
Yeah.
I would say that.
What is typically the time frame from filing to a notice or when they're given? Like, yes, it's a no,
They
yeah,
have to vote between 30 and 45 days.
30 and 45 days.
Yeah.
So you'll send the district another notice when you're having that meeting and all that.
The county will.
The
Yeah.
county will, right?
Yeah, it's actually not up to us to vote yes or no on it.
Right.
It's a county level decision.
Right.
Now, one of the things last night at their council meeting, they were not able to pass their services agreement last night, which is part of the type 2 expedited annexation. So they have 21 days to get that filed along with the petition that
Okay,
they filed yesterday. So they need to get that from Neighbor Heights at
right.
some point in time in the next 21 days. Or they're running into another problem again. So it's just all part of the legal process.
Right.
Or they come to you.
Or, one or
Right?
the other,
I
yeah.
mean, it's still a type 1,
Type
or
2.
type 2, I
Type
mean,
2.
where it's still, they're saying part of the township and they're like dual residents, right? That was how.
Could
that
be.
was
I mean, there's some other things you can work on. There's some annexation agreements that you can work on to allow that to happen.
But until we reach an annexation agreement
That's how it
with
should
them, and if that is included, then they are by default residents of both City of Huber Heights
The
and.
dual
Bethel.
citizenship, so to speak.
Thank you for that communication. So my understanding.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you. Okay, yeah, I saw them in the past. I mean, not because we don't, obviously they're in our district, so whatever happens, happens. Right. More perspective there, but I know that that's traffic wise for the township, our roads are not prepared for it. We're nowhere near from an infrastructure standpoint ready to put that on. We're still trying to get a building open in 2023 that will alleviate a little bit of pressure, but not that kind of pressure, and those tax dollars don't come in for, at least 18 months from the time someone moves in until the taxes start to come to the district.
Right.
So, that's quite a burden on us as everyone. Clear many months. So it's
If you
a
could
big
come
deal to us, just like it is to
these
you.
Council meetings would be nice, because we don't have many from Buffalo there to represent us.
Understood. Unfortunately, it's, there's conflicts with schedules. But I agree, we should discuss.
And I think, I don't know if the trustees all know, but I did follow up with ODOT to see if they were interested in widening or changing the stoplight at 201 and US 40 and 202. US 40, and at this time, they're not interested. So I don't know what else to do. It's not a high priority. It's not a high accident site, but I'm kind of like, okay, all the growth is happening and the school's close by. So I don't know what else to do.
Well, the problem that sometimes dealing with ODOT is it's not a problem until it's a problem.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, that's, you need the accident data to support it, and that already means it's dangerous by the time you get
Right,
accident data to support it. So it's kind of, you have to get the proverbial horse there and then the cart comes along. So,
Didn't we go to bat for the school saying that you didn't have to put a turn lane in?
Back
on-
with the high school, yeah.
Yeah, 201 and 202, 201.
That was part of the
40.
offsite improvements that they were requiring. at that time.
Yeah, so now that we've said 5 years ago, 7 years ago, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, I'm sure they're like, obviously,
There's a lot more space at this side than the 202 side,
Mhm,
obviously, but I just know it takes years to get funding for these projects, and I was trying to be proactive and
yeah, no,
but I don't know what other, I mean, I would be eager if you guys know other avenues to at least put a little pressure on. And I mean, I can communicate to the Miami County Commissioners again, hey, we really need some help down here for the future, because I mean, we all know the roads are gonna get congested, but I don't know what the answers are, but I did as much as I could, and
right,
they were fair with me. I mean, they said, look, they're not high problems yet.
right, right,
So, I mean, I understand where they're coming from. I understand where we're coming from. So it's
right,
the chicken and the egg problem, I guess.
right, yeah,
So many present day solutions with retroactive, or problems with retroactive.
Right,
solutions.
right.
And it's terrible.
because they're 3 years behind on everything they're doing, so therefore, there's no way that request is sliding up ahead of those other 3 years, I think. So,
Another, or behind you are, right?
yes,
Pick a road almost, it seems.
Andy, I was gonna ask, there a timeframe that you're looking at? Is there a need to be somewhere?
As far as building site goes,
Yeah.
no. I mean, we're in the early planning stages of that. In order to do that, we'd have to ask the citizens for like a bond issue. So I mean, we're off a little bit. We've had an architect do a needs analysis, needs assessment of our current building, which is inadequate as far as today's standards goes for the fire departments. We don't have decontamination areas that are set aside. We don't have a lot of these things, fuel stations for SCBA. There's a lot of things that was built, 40 years ago or whatever, for a volunteer fire station, and now we're a station that's manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So space is limited. Plus we share it with the administration side of it too. So there's a high need for it, but yet we know that there's going to be a process to get that done.
That building was built in 86, wasn't it?
86, 87, depending on when you kind of look at it, yeah.
And we got vehicles that sit outside all day around, nights and all, because we don't have room for them.
So yeah, we've identified the need, because we don't really have a standard timeline that we follow. And we know we have, the first step is kind of finding a place. We bought those 2 lots out front where the old Molly Burger and the Otto's Hall was, I mean, demoed those buildings. So, but even so, we had the architect put what would work, and it was like a long shotgun thing on there. So some of the things that we were trying to achieve, like the drive-through bays and stuff, couldn't be done. So, everything would be back in off of 40, which is doable, but not optimal. So that's why we're trying to look for a little bit bigger site, jumping up from that kind of 2-acre site up to, somewhere in the 5 to 10 acre range. 10 would leave us room for expansion later on, or different things that we would do. Obviously, the 5 would probably be about optimal. You're welcome.
I had another question for either Mr. Parks or anybody who would remember. When we were looking, when we first started the activities towards the new school that where we are now, we talked about the old building, the original school building. Once we got to 7 years down the road, we would have to decide what to do with that. And I was just wondering, do you remember the cost of that if we were to keep that? Well, what at that time we would have to put into it, like 1.7, and I don't know.
I don't know if
Anybody
that number was
remembers?
provided. I could be wrong. I don't remember providing a number in regards to annual maintenance or. I don't.
I think there was a number that was provided to bring it up to.
Yeah,
Maybe up to
So,
code.
Yeah.
That's they live on.
That's a good-
Third, whatever that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all in that state funding formula.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
part of the OSCC situation where they're like, this is the middle school, whatever,
Okay.
every little building,
I would have to look that up.
56 or whatever year it was, there were different numbers for that. I
Yeah,
do
I
not
was gonna
remember
say,
what they
it's
were.
definitely still.
Right.
Well, now, I don't think at the time.
Oh, yeah, no,
It was a
it
lot.
was a lot.
Yes.
I worked on that
You
levy,
remember?
that's
Okay.
discussions. It was $1 million just for the elevator. Like it was tons for the elevator.
Oh, yeah.
But,
That was it.
but potentially could private funds, I'm just throwing that out there too. Could private funds pay to keep that building and then put the extra effort into it? Along with, a mix of, if we were to keep everything central on this site, let's say, on the expanded site,
And make it a fire station?
have that.
Well, maybe, I think she's talking more for the offices, community center, that sort of thing.
Yeah, just because I like what Elizabeth Township has done. I believe in Bethel history and I don't want to lose, one of the most, it is probably the oldest structure as far as school. For the consolidated school,
Well, yeah,
for the
only one.
area.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's still in use.
Yeah. I know there's other little school buildings that exist that are now homes, but that's on consolidated.
I think the biggest thing is, that's kind of why we're here today, is as you get things and opportunities and things come along that, knowing that there's other things out there, it's just part of the battle. And it's like, hey, maybe you talk to the township about something along these lines. So who knows what? So just we're gonna keep our eyes open, you keep your eyes open, and we'll go from there.
It's a lot to think about. We can certainly look at the numbers for sure to see what it was to renovate and get it up to.
It's gonna be
Standard,
quite a bit.
But then obviously it's the maintenance, the upkeep figure that we have to look at as well, which you don't even know. I don't even know what we're spending now, like.
And at one time, Natalie, it had been talked about possibly the kindergarten wing could be separated off from preschool. But the cost of overhauling the actual school was pretty pricey. I don't know. I guess it's possible. I don't want to put like, but it was expensive.
So you think that was included in the CC guidelines or?
At some point,
It was in the
Going
one
through
report several
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
renovations. It was about
But that's to
11.
bring it up to OFCC standards, where if
Right.
it's not a school anymore,
It's a
then
community
it's different
center.
rules.
Well, that's.
Actually, tighter rules because
Tighter.
it's grandfathered in.
Because we're grandfathered as
Yeah.
a school building, we're
You're grandfathered
grandfathered,
in.
so.
Once you change your use, that's
Yeah.
what really got it, was the numbers went way up. I'm not saying it's not possible, I'm just saying it's probably more
Well, I
expensive
mean,
than we want.
Definitely something to look
We're
at.
digging around, see what we can find.
So did I miss anything to bring to them, guys? Anything for us?
Yeah,
No,
Okay.
I mean, everything you brought up as far as levies, do you want to talk about our next levy that we found?
Oh, well, most of our operating levies are all continued, so we won't be back on the ballot unless new money is needed. I think we just passed our PI in 21,
Yep.
so won't be up again until 25, 26.
Okay.
So hopefully things don't get too
Yeah, kind of a
crazy.
wall
Yeah,
now, so
yeah, I
it's
don't
like
think we will need to be on the ballot anytime soon, but you never know.
when's the
Look
earned
what the
income
state
tax?
does, so I'm hopeful that those numbers
When's
sort of.
the,
The income tax will be
Earned income.
24, 25.
The
Oh,
24,
25.
25, yeah,
Oh,
income
okay.
tax,
Sorry.
yeah. Mhm, yeah,
okay,
so,
I think it's 24, 25.
Yeah, so nothing in the near, nothing in the next year or two, so.
Okay,
And we extended our emergency levy to 10 years. So
oh, great.
So we've got two of them at least. I know, I mean, it's exciting to see this compared to where we were 10 years ago.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic.
So
Consolidating some of them over the years.
we didn't really consolidate them, just one of them recently made continuing.
Okay,
And if
Great.
Tina can figure out the language on the permanent improvement one, we may be able to make that. Right, she's still researching.
Wow, that'd be nice.
It will be. I mean, Mr. Ferks, the district he came from, didn't have any levies to approve, so.
You get a little bit of an issue with levy fatigue. People feel like they have to go to the ballots all the time.
Yes.
and you're
Yeah.
missing-
That's what we're for.
Yes, so. Yeah, my last district, we had, people just didn't think we had levies. And you do, but they're just continuing and you don't realize it, so.
And we have our one fire levy and our police levy are both continuing.
Yeah.
And then the other two we have are removal.
An update on the annexation of values, that's excellent information for us and Mr. First is trying to reach out to the developer.
I can certainly try
Find
to.
out.
see what he
Pass
says.
that along to-
Thank you guys very much for having
Yeah,
us.
thanks.
No, thank
Maybe
you.
next time we can host in our place and we'll go from there.
All right,
That'd be great.
thank
In
you.
the fire bay.
Yeah.
In the front of it.
It'll be
It's not
warm.
cold.
We can give you a tour. of the-
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. Thank you. See you.
Thank you. Good to see you guys.
Appreciate your time.
I'm gonna go.
Okay, and then we had moved
I'm
item
gonna stick
6.
around for the drug stuff.
Okay.
I don't know why you wouldn't, right? Especially if you've been studying. Mr. First, would you like to move with item 6A since that was one of yours?
Yes, on the agenda this evening for a presentation and some discussion questions from the Board of Education is Mr. Kyle Kruder. He represents Great Lakes Biomedical in regards to providing information on a potential student drug testing program for students in grades 6 through 12. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Kruder to provide his information.
Hello. I'm Kyle Preeter. I'm the
Oh,
president.
sorry, I pronounced your name wrong. Preeter, sorry, I said Kruder.
I don't even know him. I'm the president of Great Lakes Biomedical, and we are a drug and alcohol testing company that we do all sorts of drug testing. We do airline pilots, nuclear power plants, but we specialize also in schools. We do about 150 schools that we service currently for their drug prevention programs. And one of the first questions that you have when you're doing this type of program is, what's the purpose of it? It sounds awful lot like we're going to lay the hammer down on the kids and we're just going to make it tough, we're going to catch them. It's none of that. It's all about prevention. It's one more reason to save them. So when does the program work the best? Actually, never noticed you guys are out there, sorry. It's based on our way. Saturday night when kids are out doing what kids do and someone says, hey, you want to smoke a joint? You know what? I get tested. Let's do something else. Boom, right there. That's the whole program. So does drug testing in the school, when you make it mandatory, does it work? Well, if you would Google student drug testing, you'll probably get about 5 or 6 million different answers and such. And it'll probably be split about 50-50, like, oh, yes, no, there's no empirical evidence and such. I'm here to tell you that, yes, it does work. And don't just listen to me, though. There's plenty of studies out there that show that. But even more importantly, like in the packets, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I passed them off.
I have a listing of schools and such that it's not a complete list because it's kind of always changing. But feel free to ask the schools that we service, any of them or all of them. And you'll find out there is a significant change in the culture once you start doing this program. Is it going to eradicate all drug use? Absolutely not. But is it going to be a definite help for the kids that actually, want to do the right thing? Absolutely it will. And again, don't believe me, call the other schools that we deal with and such, and they'd be happy to talk to you. There's a few myths that I always like to address right away with drug testing, because I hear them all the time. First one, there goes the football team. No one's going to play. We're going to lose. And such. If you actually take a look at the list of schools that we service, you'll see an awful lot of them are in the playoffs, et cetera, et cetera. So I have not found a single school yet that says that there was a decrease in participation because of drug testing. And I think there's a few reasons for that. The two basic ones are parents and students. Through a lot of surveys that other schools have given out, we didn't do it. They just were kind enough to let us see the results and such. As they were going through the same process, they put out surveys to kids and parents and such. And in Ohio, about 83% of parents are for this type of program. And what I found really interesting is students. Over 50% of students were for the program. Now that surprised the heck out of me. I thought it would be like 2%. Maybe, leave me alone. I'm a school kid. Don't bother me and such. That's what I was expecting. But during some of the meetings that we've had with the community and such, we'd have students come up and give their reasons for wanting it. And the biggest reason always seemed to be the story that they'd say, you know what, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And sometimes I feel like I'm almost being punished for it because I know that these people over here, probably one or two of them had like their space on the team that they wanted to be on. They're doing drugs and such. I'm not. It's almost like they're getting rewarded and I'm getting punished for doing the right thing. And that's not right. If you're not doing drugs, it shouldn't be a problem. And again, those aren't my words. Those are the words from the students. And I will tell you again, surprised the heck out. I always thought it, all the kids would be against it, but they're not. There's a ton of peer pressure, as you all know. And the drugs nowadays are not the drugs from years and years ago. Something that fentanyl, grain of salt worth, and you're dead, et cetera, et cetera. It's just not the same. So who can you test? That's really important since you're a public school. This has all gone through, it's all legal, the Supreme Court has done it all, but the biggest thing is you cannot impede a student's progress towards graduation. In other words, you'll never touch a grade. There's never going to be like, well, yeah, you're out of here because you did drug with them. It doesn't happen. As a matter of fact, all results for drug tests are absolutely confidential and no one knows. The colleges don't know, the recruiters don't know, other teachers, et cetera, does not know. So how does the program work? I'll see a brief summary on that. Won't take a lot of your time and such, but there's a number of different ways you can do it. The first part that we like to tell people about is what I call draw the line testing. It's the most effective and it's the best type of program, but it's a little bit more expensive than some of the other types. What does draw the line mean? That means that you pick a date. Let's say it's going to be fall for like football and such. So pick August 15th, for example, say, all right, guys, football, cheerleaders, et cetera, parking permits, et cetera. August 15th is the drug test day. Now you might be, you just told the kids what the date is. They're just going to clean themselves up for the test. That's dumb. My response to that is, yeah, they are. Isn't that great? You have found something to make them clean themselves up, and then you test random afterwards. But more importantly is what we call self-referrals. A self-referral is when a student, before they're actually like picked for a random, comes up and tells the coach or the principal or whoever in charge of it. So here's what happens, and I don't have numbers for you because they don't do it for us, they do it to the school, but kids will come up and say, you know what, coach, I don't need to take that test tomorrow. I'm not going to pass. Well, if you think about that situation, what is this kid's like, what, 15 to 17, maybe 18 even, and you've told them the testing date and they still can't clean themselves up. You now have identified a person that certainly needs help and should be looked at for an assessment and such. Are they just making dumb decisions or are they seriously having a problem that could really be affecting their life? That's what the draw the line is basically about. As I said before, this is not a gotcha program. This is a non-punitive, has a little bit of teeth, but non-punitive program made for prevention. And then you do random exam. Another way to do it, and we can help you with your budget because I haven't come to a school yet that said money's no object for our rule. Just let us.
This one won't be that one.
But we can make all sorts of mock proposals, for example. So if you take, it's just numbers. How many kids you have in your school? What grade you want to go down to? Most schools go down to 7th and 8th grade now, just as a point of interest. Why? Because that's when they are starting to use drugs now. We got heroin, marijuana, cocaine, et cetera, at 7th grade. So I hate to say it, I hate that it happens, but it does. So The other way you can do the program though is just simply randoms. How many randoms? You should have at least about 50% of your total population. Total population, of course, it is about 80% of the school, most schools. It consists of, if you want to do parking lot and drivers, football, basketball, et cetera, extracurriculars, it's usually about 5%. So if you get about 50%, that's during the school year, that's great. If your budget doesn't allow that, then we adjust it to what it will allow. It's pretty simple that way. You got the program that like absolutely, top line the best, but if you can't afford to do that much, at least you can afford to do this. We're very flexible. We don't have just one test. We don't just have one way to do the program. We fit it in your school, your house. So real quick, I don't want to bore you with all this stuff, but what does this stuff look like? It looks kind of scary, and you got drug testing and all this stuff. So I'll just go through real quick, like day in the life of Johnny Smith, drug test student. First thing that happens is Great Lakes, we take care of basically everything. Come to the school, do the test right here. We pick the randoms for you, so there isn't any parent, oh, you're picking on my kid. Don't know your kid, don't care. They're just all numbers literally because we just put it in a random number generator. So we will have a designated person or persons, usually only one or two, and that's significant. Why? Confidentiality. If somebody else, another teacher, administrator, secretary, whatever, like, hey, if they're not on the list, then we just tell them, I'm sorry, we didn't talk to whoever the designated person is. So we call up, or they call us, we get a testing date. So let's say it's Wednesday at 10 o'clock. We're going to come in and do, I don't know, but we're going to do 30 kids, for example. We'll show up here at about 1:45, go to the bathrooms, and frankly, I haven't seen them yet, but we'll go to the bathrooms and we'll put gluing in the toilets and all that other good stuff. And then we'll come in and start the testing. Bring the kids down. We can test up to about 150 kids per hour if we're doing a big test. And if it's just simply randoms, it's around 100 now. So it's not a long process. We've done this for years and years. We've tried to make it as painless for the kids and for the administration. So we're there, we're all set up. Whichever way the school chooses to communicate, whether it's now electronic to the classes or runners, with passes and such, kids will come down, and if I'm Johnny Smith, I'll just go to the drug test technician who's standing in front of the bathroom and say, I'm Johnny Smith, I was called to come down and take a test. Say, yes, Johnny, you were picked as a random. All we need is a urine specimen. Choose urine, I'll go over the different drugs here in just a second. Urine specimen, all we need is half a cup, don't flush, don't rain water, and bring it back to me. You are cup number 13 because you're 13 on the list. There you go, thank you. Johnny goes in, does it, comes back. We take a look at that specimen a few different ways, and temperature, color, et cetera, for adulterants. And then Johnny will sign out, Johnny Smith, cup number 13, and back off to the class. We have, since this is not DOT, it doesn't have to have the 5-page chain of custody, but that is a chain of custody there on the roster. We got it on the cup, and then Johnny signed off and said that, yeah, that's his. So Johnny goes back to class. All in all, well, maybe 10 minutes, not a whole lot of time. We then will screen the test right there on site. If you send it directly to a laboratory, they screen it, and then we'll send it to GCMS if it turns out to be a non-negative. We do that on site. So what our hope is, when we're done with the random, we'll go to our negative person after we screen them all and say, everyone's good, we'll see you next time. And that's always our hope. That means the program can move. Sometimes we get what's called non-negative. It's not a positive yet. Non-negative is just simply, they're kind of like pregnancy tests. 2 lines are good, 1 line not so good. So let's say that we've got a non-negative for marijuana, for example. At that point, we do the full chain of custody, just like bus drivers and truck drivers and such. The designated person signs for the student. Why? Because the student is like 14 and can't legally sign a paper anyway. They follow all the information, make sure it's all right. They sign it, and then we ship it off to the certified laboratory. Same one for the airline pilots and such. They put it through the GCMS gas spectrometer machine. It'll give us a digital fingerprint of that chemical. They look at it and say, yep, that's THC, marijuana. Send it back to us, who we send it to a doctor. It's called an MRO, medical review officer, a doctor that specializes in drug testing. They'll look at it and go, yep, that's marijuana. At that point, the doctor will call the guardian, mom or dad or whoever, and say, hey, Johnny had a test a few days ago. Is there any prescriptions, et cetera, and then they'll let them know what the test was and, how it could come about, et cetera, et cetera. And as you can see, that takes a little bit of time back and forth and everything. What do you do with Johnny during that period of time? Nothing. Doesn't even know what's going on until maybe mom says, hey, you guys had a test a few days ago because the doctor just called. Now, that same process, which I won't go over again, but what if it's positive for amphetamines? That's a big one in school, Adderall and such. Same process, except now when the physician calls mom and dad or whoever, they'll say, any prescriptions, and they might say, well, yeah, he's on Adderall. Great, send this over. And nowadays they can even just send a picture of the bottle because the doctor can do all the things that they need to do from there. Boom, it's done. It's a negative. Johnny, again, didn't even know what happened to mom. So you see the process, we try to make it as simple as possible, yet as expedient as possible. And everything that we do, all the checks and balances align on the side of the student. Because again, it's prevention and it is not a gotcha program. Now, real quick, testing different types of ways that you can test. Urine testing, it's the gold standard. It's my own pee joke, I got gold standard. but it's been around the longest. And it's usually the most cost effective and such. That's what, I'd say 95% of our schools do. But there's also hair tests. Some people might say, well, hair is the best. Hair is not the best. Hair goes back the longest. Doesn't mean it's the best. If you smoke a joint, for example, and if you see someone smoking a joint right in front of you, if you went and did a urine test, and that's the only time they ever did anything, wouldn't show. Did a hair test, wouldn't show. Did a saliva test, well, that would show. So they're all made for different things. Hair tests, about $50+ a test. It's expensive. Urine tests are like $17. Then there's saliva tests. Saliva is real easy. You just open your mouth, put a little sponge thing in, and do the test. It's the most easiest test there is. The problem is it only goes back 8 to 24 hours. So we typically don't use that for like everybody all the time because unless they did something like in the morning or the night before, then they're not show. You use it though somebody can't legitimately go to the bathroom or something that just helps the process along. So that's pretty much how the program works. Are there any questions?
Is there more of a round number that you can supply as far as instead of the individual cost for each test? Is there more of a round number?
How many people, how many from the high school? How many kids?
We're looking at higher, a little over 400.
Okay. Got 400.
But,
0.85.
Counting the middle school and the high school, I don't know.
Let's just do the high school for the round numbers. Which, by the way, here's what I suggest for the junior high. Almost all of our schools in the last 5 to 10 years include junior high. I don't think it's cost effective to do junior high equal to the high school, but they should still be done. So what do you do with that? The junior high is considered typically a separate school. There's a couple schools I think that just lump them all in. A separate school, so 400 and let's say 100 in those, for example. We would come out
Our bigger numbers in our lower grades. So
there we go.
It's going to be more now in junior high. They're coming.
But the best thing you can do, in my opinion, though, is you just have smaller numbers in the junior high so that they still get the effect and the benefit of, hey, no, I don't want to try that. I get tested. But you also are, we have had a school years ago when they combined them all into once. We went out and 30 kids and 25 of them in the junior high, 5 in the high school. So, okay, let's separate that so that doesn't happen. Efficient, but that's the best way to do it. So we just picked the number 400. Are you going to need parking passes? Have parking passes?
It's an option for student drivers.
So let's say that your average, everybody, we figure out some of the 85% is typically what it is, sort of. Yeah, and then if you do the draw the line, and what I'll do is I'll send you mock proposals because it does get complicated. It can go anywhere from 0 to 100. But if you tested everybody, then it's like, okay, 350 times, let's say a 5-pound times $17 times 1.2 because you want to do. Now you're doing draw the line, and now you're doing 20% randoms. That's one way to do it. And then 1.2, that's where it comes. everybody, and you 20% finance. So that could be a yearly number right there. If you make sure that you do all of your kids on just a random, then it's just, what your 350 times, let's say 17, plus you add anything else. Or if you only do half the kids on random. Okay. A lot of math, a lot of numbers, but I'll certainly do it. That gives you kind of like a guideline just to provide. Also, there 85% of kids are eligible to be in the program. Can be more because, by the way, we do have the opt-in program. Opt-in, what does that mean? Mom and dad says that they want Johnny to be in there, and we do that. How do they pay for it? That's up to you guys. Do they pay for it? School pays for it, or however everybody else is doing it. But it gives them the opportunity to use the program benefit also. We have some schools that have like 50, 60 kids easy on it. And then real quick, the last thing that we have available is total volunteer program. We do those also. And that's just a whole other thing, but we can do it any way we go. Sorry, that wasn't like a real clear answer, but it's a lot of underground. We'll get you those too.
I was gonna ask, other than the opt-in option, when would parents sign their permission that they acknowledge that this is possible?
That'll be up to the school and such, but nowadays they put them on whatever you call them, the final forms or targets, whatever. But so it's just like another consent form, like the one that we typically use is just really like a 2-page one explains it all, and the parent signs and then the student signs. So that's typically the beginning of the school year on the line for the unit now. Otherwise, it was all that stuff we had to fill out, like the physicals and all that, everything for each sport. It kind of followed that. We still, even if you're in chess club or parking, we still kind of follow the sport seasons.
We utilize final forms here in the district. We're completely paperless.
Excellent. So it would just be inserting a couple, which by the way, we have the policies, we, 100, some schools are using that we wrote most of. And we also have the consent forms and such, and you don't have to use them, but almost everybody uses them. Just with their bones of doing so.
My question for you, I mean, you described that it's, for drivers and athletes and people in clubs and groups like that. Why is that? Why wouldn't it be like kind of
Because you're a
everybody,
public
maybe the
school.
non-joiners might not?
Yeah, well, everybody can, but
Sure.
since you're a public school, you can't force people to take a drug test.
Sure.
It's part of the Supreme Court thing, like, look, we're gonna make you go to school, but we can't make you do a drug test, and also you can't impede a student's progress towards graduation. So of course, no grades, no anything else. So all you can do is say, you know what, you are absolutely allowed, and it's your right to go to school. It's not your right to have a parking pass or a football, et cetera. And that's how they do it, because you can't just, unless you're a private school, you can't just say, we're going to do everybody. We had some schools that were getting pretty close, but that's because they were really doing the opt-in program an awful lot. And what's the rewards for that? You can make rewards too, just kind of like a drug-free program. And I guess the bottom line is, I don't have just a box program. This is all of this. This is your community. You are a heck of a lot different than, Northeastern and Northwestern and et cetera, Ohio. So you tailor it, and we'll help you with that. The only thing we'll do is if you veer into something that's like, no, we don't want to do this. We'll help you with that.
Sure. And do you see very many students whose families just opt them out? They're like, I know my son's an athlete, but we're opting them out. And how does that work, or what are the reasons they give?
Actually, the way it would work, school decides. Want to play football, there's that stack of forms you gotta do for everything, and the drug consent form is in there. And someone said, well, I don't want to sign that. You don't have to make a sign. You can't play football. It's easy that. And if you made it all optional, then that's a whole different program. And I would say scrap the mandatory and just have like a drug-free club where anybody that wants to volunteer. It's real quick, the drug-free club is more like all volunteer, and then the school, and you can have both of them at the same time. Schools do that. But hey, if you volunteer to do this program, we're going to give you a certificate or a card, and then it's up to somebody in the school to go to your community. Hey, I can get 10% off at Wendy's, and I can get all this discounts and they offer you parking things, hey, I get to park up front because I'm et cetera, there's a lot of things.
So there's no, like, say if the student knows they're on adults, they're definitely gonna hit for that. There's no way to like, for them to opt out because of the other things that we pick up. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, because, and what we also do is, it's a student is on medication. And sometimes we've had, my parent wants me to tell you that I'm on, I was like, I don't want to hear any of this.
Right.
Yeah, because there's all sorts, I
Privacy,
don't,
et cetera.
I don't want to hear about, I don't want to hear about any of this type of stuff,
Sure.
just if it it's be a non-negative, that's when we'll work.
Sure.
And we even had some parents call every now and then, like, my kid didn't get positive for amphetamines and they're taking it, it's like, maybe, you know, or maybe they're not.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. I have another question. I'm trying to remember what it was. I don't think right. I think it's kidding.
Well, I think the second part of your original question, I kind of went back to like a bunch of people fleeing the school or the program. Typically what will happen if you decide to go through this, you'll have like this 3 to 5% group that are ideologically opposed. I get it. I kind of am too, except the real world is, hey, the drugs are out here and it's different than it was 30 years ago. So, but you know, you can never change that opinion. So, but that the majority, as you often know, of people, the silent majority, I guess you call it, they are actually for it. It's just that I'm going to go through that as an expert. Oh, you're going to do that? Great. Meeting.
For districts about our size, can you say like, say they started off with, you know, like you said, the randomized, you know, maybe we just did a sample testing and then started random after that. About how many positives do you think we can expect?
That's an interesting question. It's an interesting, more interesting question for this year. Honestly, because, according to the Atlas survey, if you can look at that, overall drug use, they say is still on a bit of a downward trend because the new drug use is less now. And I'm kind of paraphrasing everything. And why is the new drug use less than the peers? So no one's saying, hey, try this. That's changing. Each community is different too. We've gone through like the very first test, like, didn't have anything. We've gone through, it's like, okay, take 2, but you know, 5 or 6 positive. And again, if they know what's coming, that's a big thing. Will some of the students try and say, well, I don't want to change my behavior. I want to change progress to test. Yep, they will. And that's where we start talking about what I didn't determine another very smart superintendent did, but the bubble kids, for lack of better numbers, 10% of kids, you could pay them, you could try to force them, they'll never give yours a better one. 10%, I'm sorry, but they've already gone down that path, and you're going to have a heck of a time changing it. That 80% has peer pressure, they can go either way. Those are the kids you really have to. Can a student, if they were super, you know, wanting to pass the test, can they, you know, fake the assessment? Of course. If they're willing to get up every day and strap on like the Wizinator, you look it up, and wear that all day long in case the random happens. Sure. But that kid, they got commitment. You know, that kid, you don't want to say it's like too late for the program, but the crux of this program is beyond what they're at. You can only kind of do what it doesn't mean disabandon them, but this part of the program, it's just not going to happen. But probate is going to get a positive because according to your policies, when you get a positive, it's not like the old days where it was, gotcha, you're out of here. It's like, okay. And so for that real quick, because you guys probably don't have everything down, but it's how it typically works is kind of a 3-strike type thing. First time you're caught, it's like, okay, go down path A or B. Path A is I'd like you to do these things here, and then you're back on the team and everything. Path B is you don't want to do any of that, and well, you can't play anymore. And all it is, you need to get an assessment. You've got to find out, which by the way, we have a program in the 3rd millennium that is very good at doing the assessments, but you don't have to try to find somebody that's open and find it. It's all online. But they get assessment, Typically, if you decide the number, but 3 to 5 randoms are not going to be random for them anymore. And that's just a really good thing for them, because instead of when their friends are saying, hey, have a joint, and oh, I might, next time they come, I'm on the list, no more. That's what that's all about. And then they might contain 20% of their activity, whatever it is. Football's 2 games. But they're back. It's not like, you're out. No, please stay, please be part of our family, our team. You can still practice whatever, next 2 games, sorry. But after that, come back. You're never really gone. That's like the philosophical difference. And it really, I would see an awful lot of, gotcha, we're gonna punish you and take you out. This is a little bit of teeth, but the goal is to keep you.
So it's not really non-punitive.
Nothing, it's designed to be non-punitive, but for anything to be effective, it has to have some teeth. But the old teeth used to be, we caught you, boom. This is, and it's also non-punitive in the way of these self-referrals, which, I've gone over that, a person like Johnny who says, hey, I don't need to take the test. That's a self-referral. A self-referral is typically like once a high school career. You can't do it every test. But that situation, when a kid on his own, it doesn't count when they got picked or ran. But when, the big test or something like that, or if they made a mistake, like, hey, I just went to a big party this weekend. I knew it was wrong, but I did it. That's a self-referral. They talk, say, okay, you still got to do the assessment. Still going to be on the next couple of randoms. It's make sure that they're not like deeply in trouble because they don't get passed out. And you don't have the punishment section. It's kind of like, you came clean, didn't have to, we're going to get you help, and we're going to keep you there. You do it the second year, think, I'm sorry, that's like the same first positive. But as you see that the punishment part is an extreme. It's kind of, if you get caught doing drugs, you miss 2 games. Second time you get caught, it's usually like 50%. So you miss 5. Third time, it's up to your school. I don't want to do this, but most schools say third time's like, all right, enough. All right, 3 times, positive drug tests, et cetera, et cetera. Now we feel there's an issue of you playing next to these other kids while you are doing drugs and such. Now that's another issue that we're not comfortable with. But it doesn't mean that they're necessarily banned for life. There's always a problem there that if they really had a problem in the freshman year, and then you see that they like change, there's usually a way to come back. I don't really get involved with that a whole lot. You can touch the schools that do it, but that's just part of the policy. You never want to just say, kid, you're done.
Be part of our, potentially part of our athletic code of conduct handbook that we have, which are currently in place. The kid gets caught now, it's a 2-game suspension. It's no different.
I found from talking to a lot of schools that usually the code of conduct in this program mesh pretty well. There's usually not a whole lot of change there.
I should say a 2-game suspension for a 10-game season, it's 20%. Basketball would be 4 games. Well, baseball is 27 games, but the 20% of 27. It depends on the sport and how many games they have on a regular season schedule.
I used to be the band and choir director here, and I just have a problem with you're taking a class, you're gonna have to be drug tested for it.
Now,
And
band and
I have a
choir, you're
problem with
right. It's a different thing, and every school handles it different, band and choir. I've been in on a lot of those discussions, though I'm not obviously part of the school, so I don't know all the details, but what we typically do is say, you know what, you're right, you can't change the grade because of the drug test. But what I've heard is like, okay, if they because most schools want to get as many people involved, and that's how you get the culture change, the most benefit from it. So they do the band, but if someone was positive, it doesn't mean that they're cut out of class or anything, but I've heard such thing like, well, instead of marching, you're going to do a paper, or instead of they have alternatives. I didn't get into all the details because I'm usually not there for that part of the discussion, but they make it so that it doesn't hurt them grade wise, but maybe some of the stuff that they want to do, like I guess, marching on the field as opposed to being a football player, playing on the game. That's just how they do it. And I think that some schools just don't do that too.
Have you ever worked with schools who help like with the fee for the third millennium classroom situation, like for students who are maybe free and reduced lunch, things like that, that
I don't.
I understand there's a punitive nature to it and I get that, but
The third millennium, that's not $2.
right.
I'm gonna assume so, but they don't tell me that part. And so in other words, I give them the tools and everything, and then they don't, sometimes they talk, but other times they just don't bother. As far as the drug tests themselves, I've heard 160 different ways. Everything from, you know what, students pay everything. To the other extreme, you know what, the board's gonna pay for absolutely everything, and then everything in between. If you happen to have it's easier, of course, if you have good boosters, if you happen to have any bigger companies around, and hey, because you do the math, it's still this size. Probably not more than like 5,000 or so, depending on, once you fold all the line and such. So most, there's often companies around that will help with that. Lake in Millbury, right? Otherwise, they do one where the student pays 100%. Then if they're in a second sport, they pay 50%. If they're in a third sport, they pay 0. So that's how they do it. Another one is using pop machines, I guess, and the profit for that. So the way to do it is just endless.
I would just think for the treatment program online portion of it, it's, you know, if you want to get a kid treatment program,
Yes,
but they're not a kid who can maybe afford it, that would be
I have heard.
difficult, you know?
Again, it's kind of, they talk about that stuff usually.
Sure.
But I've heard that it's often connections anyway with not just this place, but because our place is mandatory.
Sure.
Our place is just convenience, especially during COVID, because we were having no problems, and why can't get it? No one's thinking. So, we can help find different things out as most connections to make some. Let's take care of it.
Other questions, thoughts, concerns?
All right,
Mr. Peter, thank you.
thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for your time, sir.
All right. See you later.
Safe travel.
Patience. Okay, up next on our agenda is hearing of the public for agenda item. I have a few slips here. Ms. D?
Hey, I see there's some items on the agenda tonight that needs a motion or a vote. It's my understanding that there should be no voting during work session, only regular meetings and special meetings. Can you please clarify why there is items that are going to be voted on or a motion needed? Also, can the public be provided as to what the existing policies are, what the new policy would be, if so, we can be made aware of what the changes are being. The two that I have in question is review of board policy, NOLA 4020, and then, well, they've changed a little bit. I printed this out earlier and now it's changed. The other one is technical changes to board policy. We actually printed out the board policies that you have listed on A action. And seems like there's going to be a motion or something made. These were last dated May 10, 2021. That's the most current that we have. Have all of you taken a look at this? Or, I mean, they're pretty hard to look through. And I'm just questioning, there's really not supposed to be a vote. Are you taking any kind of vote on this tonight?
The only action that's being taken tonight has to do with compliance officers. We have 2 compliance officers for the district. One of our compliance officers is Jody Petty. She no longer works in the district. Carrie Jones has replaced her as a principal. She's gone through all the training, and now her name is being added to every single one of those policies where Jody Petty was listed. That's the only action.
Okay, it's just for personnel.
Jody Petty crossed out, Carrie Jones put in.
Okay, so nothing to do with any kind of policy or anything like that.
Everything else is a first reading.
Okay. And then the other one was B. Where it says, I did the dropout and it says dressing, grooming, weapons, grants, funds, principal spending, credit.
Those are
card.
all first readings. Will be
All first
discussed this
readings?
evening. Second reading is intended for the next board meeting on the 14th,
Okay,
not votable items.
okay, that's fine, I need to know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Mrs. Curley.
Like that answered most of the questions that I had as well. There were things about the items dealing with the review of board policies and the technical changes. Just a note, I do find it difficult that, you know, if we're going to look for what the technical changes are going to be, when you go out to look at the board docs, there's nothing out there to tell the public what that change is going to be before we would show up for this. So it might be adding a little bit to the agenda to say, this is what we're changing, because that might reduce some of the concern, to say, we're only changing name this to this. Because otherwise you do print off 80 pages trying to figure out what exactly it is that a technical change might be. So just something to think about. And then I guess that answers as well the Neola policy, just to make sure that we're not taking any votes or making any changes to the current stance that was adopted on January 10th at the board meeting dealing with the transsexual use of the restrooms and locker rooms. I wanted to ensure that that was not something that was going to be brought up since it wasn't on any of the agenda items. But I can't speak to that agenda item if it's not actually in there. So I guess we just have to see what happens. Thank you.
Yeah. And Mrs. Reese, about.
I have a little prepared statement, because I'm not good with memory. So this is in regards to the Chromebook proposal. I've been asking for other operating systems for years at the school. Instead of touchscreen Chromebooks for the very youngest kids, can we look into Apple computers? They're easy for the younger children to learn because they focus on creative abilities more than technical, and creative tasks are what our younger students are doing. This would teach our children a variety of computer technology instead of just 13 years of Chromebook, which is not even used in the real world. And on the other end of the spectrum, it would be good if juniors and seniors received laptops to learn yet another operating environment, such as Windows or Unix. Not suggesting it's time, juniors and seniors, for laptops, but maybe in the future. So the board is always saying our mission, excuse me, is to do what's best for the kids, but a lifetime of just Chromebooks is not what's best. It will not help them be more successful post-graduation. So I implore you to expose our students to a wider variety of technologies. That's my statement. And then I just have a couple questions that when you get to the discussion part, if maybe you could address them. One was for the Young Fives program. Does the state pay for these tablets based on the statement made at the last meeting that said that the Young Fives program is totally funded by the state? And then the second thing is, can you explain a little bit about why a 4-year cycle and how it not being a 5-year plus asset affects the budget because of the fund we take things out of? And will 9th grade always be on the list to get new machines as they enter high school as part of that 4-year? It used to be you get one as a freshman and keep it till you were a senior. Sounds right.
So I can answer the Young Fives question. So the answer to that would be no, because the state does not provide funds for school systems to purchase technology for students.
Okay.
And they have E-rate dollars that we can use for various things or grants. The comment that was made about it being fully funded kindergarten dollars, meaning that it's not preschool where the district would have to pay a portion of that costs.
Okay.
So not that unless Jason can correct me, our tech coordinator, I don't believe that the state provides dollars for us to specifically buy Chromebooks only for kids. So when I made the comment fully funded, that meant that it's not preschool, where districts oftentimes have to transfer money from their general fund to cover salary and benefits because preschool is an unfunded mandate. I mean, if it was funded and compulsory and mandatory, every school in Ohio would have preschool, but they don't.
So it's just funded the way any other grade is funded.
It's funded like a traditional kindergarten program where you're getting your state share of dollars to pay for whatever goes into that classroom.
Okay.
But those dollars don't include technology because no classroom gets technology dollars from the state of Ohio.
Kind of made out to be a special program.
It is, it is a special program. I don't want to downplay the impact that it could have on our kids educationally. You know, I think personally, it's only my opinions. I think Bethel is in need of, in some point in time, of a preschool program. We do have one up at the church on 201, but you know, I think down the road as space issues become more available, potentially, that the district look at having their own preschool on campus. I oftentimes tell people that kindergarten is not kindergarten when I went to school. Oftentimes kindergarten now is the new first grade. And the kids academically, emotionally, socially are expected to do more than they've ever been expected to do. And oftentimes when they come to a kindergarten classroom, some of them are not academically ready. Some of them are not socially ready for a full day with what's required of them to meet standards from the state of Ohio. So I think it's a potential opportunity for parents that constantly call and ask why my kid can't get into kindergarten because they missed the state deadline or they missed the board policy deadline of August 1st. This allows us to open up an educational opportunity in a small setting. We're hoping to keep it around 14 to 16 kids based on screening, and it's optional, but there's also the option that if enough parents are interested in it, that we could have 2 sections of young fives that first year. So to me, that's 28 to 32 kids that are receiving an education from Bethel local schools that would not have been educated here previously. And I think that makes a big difference. So,
Okay.
yeah.
That's all the stuff I had, unless somebody else had one I didn't see.
And Julie, Jason and I addressed, we have a computer technology class that I think has more advanced computers in. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yeah, but that's not available until what grade?
Usually I think freshmen can take this
I
class.
believe actually some middle school
Oh,
has
yeah.
options as well.
So I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you, but we do have that option as well.
It's also an option. The world is becoming computers, right? You guys know I'm a geek, so I'm gonna push technology wherever I can, but.
I wasn't sure you even knew that was an option.
Oh, yeah, I knew. I knew I'm a computer.
Sorry. I don't need other questions. Anything else you want to add?
I can wait until the,
Okay.
we
Sounds great. Okay, I think I forgot to ask the board, go back up to section 2A. Any other agenda addition items to be added to the agenda? Where those sentences come from my face right now, but anybody else have anything to add? Either of you anything to add to the agenda? Okay, skip that and went straight to hearing of the public. Me and my few minutes. Okay, all right, then in that case, moving to item 4, important dates to know. Okay, we are at our work session now. Parent teacher conferences on Thursday, 3:30 to I think 7. I think that's 7 o'clock that they go to. Father-daughter dance coming up, and I believe that the junior and senior girls maybe are offering the Bees Boutique or doing hair and nails, which is so cute. Love that so much. Middle school dance is coming up. Remember that? My son, remember that? High school facilities meeting and Board of Education meeting on the 14th. Young Fives and informational meeting.
Yeah, that's kind of in reference to what Mrs. Reese was just asking about with the Young Fives program. Hopefully, parents that potentially are interested in this program that have kiddos that fall within that kind of age range, come that evening. We'll have our 2 building elementary principals and probably our curriculum director. I'll probably be there as well to provide a presentation and take any questions from family members that want to just gain more information about what the program is. It's the first year for it. To be upfront, there's not any districts in this area that have it. The closest district would be about 45 minutes north of here, not too far from where I grew up. Hardin-Housen is the district that we visited as a site visit with staff members and took a look at it. They've had the program now for roughly 7 years. And it's a 2-year commitment, obviously, that parents will be made aware of, but on average, they're seeing about a 60% growth in those kids during that 2-year program. So like we said, it's fully funded kindergarten hours minus the technology component. And it's an opportunity for families that have requested to get kids into school earlier, to get them into school earlier and to get them ready for a second year, which would be a traditional kindergarten classroom. So their first year is almost like a modified kindergarten slash preschool curriculum. So it is a 2-year commitment and people will be made aware of that upfront. So.
And that's on the 15th at 6 o'clock. and it's
Yeah, here in the media
All
center.
right.
We weren't sure how many would come, so we started it off in here.
Justin, in districts that have that, how many, do you have any kids drop out because of moving or just family situations?
Well, I mean, part of that is though also that during the communications with families, you know, if they would happen to move districts or change districts, it's not considered kindergarten. So if they would go from here to Heber Heights or Fairborn, they're gonna have to take kindergarten the second year. It's not considered a full kindergarten program. I don't want people to think that. That's why we're calling it.
No, that's good. I just was curious.
There's, my own oldest daughter was in a program similar to this when we lived way up north. My last year of teaching, when I was still coaching, up in Napoleon, it was called Beginner Garden. Hardin-Housen calls it Young Fives. It's the same program, just a different, they had a little catchier name. But we knew that it was, so it's for those kids that have a summer birthday and maybe their moms and dads don't want them to be the youngest kid in their grade. And they almost want to do that second year of the kindergarten traditional program to be the oldest, just maturity, readiness for school.
Then.
Like my oldest daughter, Kendall, has a June 26th birthday. We didn't want her to be the youngest in her grade. So we did the beginner garden program. The second year she went into the traditional kindergarten program. It's amazing how much kids change in a year.
Yeah. Well, it seems to work out very well for her.
She's all right. She's all right.
She's a good kid, come on.
She's all right.
And then we'll have the elementary and middle school on the 16th and 17th, the dessert spectacular. That's a new name. I don't remember being called that in the past. The dessert concerts are always a hit. For it's choir and band, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Probably true.
Not for elementary, but for middle school, it's a band as well. I think.
Yeah, and if we could go back just a minute,
Yeah.
it didn't make it, but March 12th is the Bell Fountain.
yeah,
contest.
that's-
So if they want to
Sorry,
come
we
out-
did have it.
It's all right, it's not a big deal, and it's also our district science day, so our kids will be going out to Edison that day, the 6th one, so if you could put that on March 12th, so that'll be a busy day for the school.
That will be.
Where did that on the 12th?
March 12th, district science day at Edison, and then, or maybe it's at Upper Valley, I don't remember, I'll have to get back with you, and then the second one is OEA contest.
It might be the 11th and 12th. for district. I don't know if they
Okay.
still do them on
I
the
think
same
it's
day.
all Saturday, I think.
We'll check and make sure.
Thank you.
All right, and then we're in spring break.
Yeah,
Can't even believe it.
fly by.
It really is. And I'll stop there because I'm sure everybody's bored with things that are so far right now in the future. Okay. Anyone have anything else we missed? Okay. Excellent. All right. Item 5, treasurer's items. Mrs. Hageman.
Okay, so item A is the review of the Park National Bank Agreement for deposit of public funds. Every 5 years, you're required to do a new bank agreement. And this is Park National's agreement. So just need you to review that. And if you have any questions, let me know so that we can have that approved at the March 14th meeting. And of course, we have the minutes from February 1st and February 14th for your review. I don't have review payment of the bills because we're still working on closing the books today. So that's why I was, didn't get here that early and was a little behind getting everything set up. I was still trying to find $2,000, but we'll get it reconciled and get it done. But we'll have that for you guys as soon as I possibly can prior to the 14th. And that includes the monthly financial report. Then each year you have to approve, the board is required to approve the rates and amount as provided by the Miami County Auditor's Office. And That's what all these wonderful numbers are, what they say we're gonna receive in tax dollars and other areas. And so typically that comes off of our tax budget that we submitted along with the Miami County auditor's suggestion and estimates. So we need your approval on that. Farm lease discussion. We only had, as you know, we did a request for proposals on a farm lease. It was due on February 14th. We only had one submission, and that was with our current tenant, for lack of a better term, RJ Benham. Yeah. And I provided you with his submission. He wants to do a multi-year lease. I think he said 3 to 5 years. I would suggest not doing more than 2, only because with all the building that's going on, and then, you know, the baseball fields might be moved and things of that nature. I think if we did more than 2, there might be some concern about having to maybe take some of that acres for some other reason. But I totally agree that we should probably do more than a 1 year because there is a lot of investment on the farmer's end to get things up and running. So if that's okay with everyone, think it over, but I would suggest a 2-year agreement, and then next board meeting, as I explained to him, we will approve the agreement would be retroactive to March 1st, since he was the only applicant that we had, unless the board has any concerns about that. So, you know, and I will have the final lease prepared for everyone to review, including, you know, RJ, so that we can all be on the same page for your approval on the 14th. Need your approval on a couple transfers. Transfer from 019 Hope Squad to 001 General Fund to reimburse for fiscal year 21 expenditures. Mr. Ferks wrote a grant for Hope Squad that was like 10,000 and some change to cover some expenses. And in the interim, before the money came in, the district used general fund last year to pay for part of the program. In your transition between treasurers, 5,500 didn't get moved before the end of the fiscal year last year, as I'm going through and cleaning up accounts and trying to get everything in order. So I can't really just expense it out anymore. I have to do a general, I have to transfer it back to the general fund because we spent it out of the general fund, that grant money. And anytime I make a transfer like that, I need the board's approval. So there was 5,500 spent prior to June 30, 2021, and we need to get that money back into the general fund rather than out of that grant, put it back into that grant. Same thing for the 451-920-9221, which is your data communications grants. Usually that reimbursed the district for the cost of all the technology that we're using, and that didn't happen last year. So we just need to transfer the money from that grant into general fund to cover those expenditures. A review of amended certificate of estimated resources and appropriation resolution. That's a mouthful to say your estimated revenues and your estimated budget. So I'm working on, you know, of course, grant changes that have happened. Been working with Jason and others. We're gonna, you know, use some of the money we had initially set aside for Chromebooks or student and you know, technology to move that money into the transportation department so that we can purchase buses using the 152,000 and some change that came from the state. So we can get all 3 buses. So, you know, we are allowed to use some of the ESSER ARP money to buy instructional materials. Well, Chromebooks are an excellent, you know, example of, you know, instructional material. So if we can use that grant money, then we can use the money already in our budgets for technology to purchase buses. So it's in our budgets as a 640, which is equipment purchase. So I'm just trying to figure out how we can do that without adding to our current budget and you know, so we're going to have those kind of changes coming up, as well as overall changes in federal and state grants for everybody to take a look at. And you will probably start seeing this every month from me because you have a lot of student activity accounts and a lot of changes happening with that. And so that will be something that needs your approval every month, so. And that's all I have.
Any questions? concerns?
I have a couple questions. Sure. So I think you will already address this, but we do have an out if we need land for a building sooner. Okay.
Well, I mean, it isn't in the current farm lease, which is why I don't have that out there, but I'm looking at what we can put in there, but I talked to, our project manager with Peterson Construction, Lida and I had spoken about this before. And he said, you know, he didn't see any need for us to have that right now, but he was, you know, cautious about doing more than 3 years or 4 years, you know, because of the building that's going on around here. So I said, yeah, I agreed with him on that. So adding maybe some little bit of verbiage, a little bit of language, it says, if this may happen, I'm looking at adding that. So that's why it's not available right now for the board to review. Just having one of our attorneys review what I've added, because I'm certainly not an attorney. I just want to make sure that my language is valid.
So just as a follow-up, Glenn Peterson doesn't foresee that they're gonna need any pathways, roadways, access that goes across that 39 acres that's currently part of our.
Right. Not that he can think of at this time. Of course, things may change, but he couldn't think of any at this time.
And are we increasing that percentage each year? Is that staying the same? I'm sorry, for the rate that we are, I forget the rental rate or the lease rate. What is the? Yeah. Is that?
That's his proposal. I mean, if the board wants to make a counter proposal and increase that, we can certainly put that in the lease, yeah. I'll be frank, never done a farm lease before, so this was my first run at it. But yeah, you can certainly add language that says we're gonna do a 2% increase each year, or, but his proposal is strictly a cost per acre for 3 to 5 years.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was impressed with Mr. Benham's responses. I
Me too.
thought, they were very, they were great suggestions.
Yeah.
I thought 3 years would be fine, but 2 years. Especially if Mr. Peterson people say that.
So I'll get some changes made and sent out, because I know we made some changes to the lease the last time, so we'll get that sent out to everybody for your review, so.
I appreciate that Mr. Benham's comments were very much geared towards, you know, looking from the board's perspective, not just his own. And that was wonderful. It's very respectful and wonderful. Yeah.
And I would echo that and thank him for his flexibility. I know it's probably been frustrating because we were really late last year getting the lease approved because we weren't sure where we were and everything. So if he's listening in, or if you know him, please convey our gratitude.
Anything further for Mrs. Hageman? Okay. Lovely. Okay, moving on to superintendent's items. Item 6, Mr. Perks.
Thank you. On the agenda this evening for consideration and discussion would be letter B, motion for technical changes to board policies. As you see, there's 13 policies, I believe, that are listed below, from 1422 all the way to 5517. Each one of those policies had Jody Petty listed as a compliance officer. Ms. Petty no longer is employed in the district. Carrie Jones, elementary principal, has received the appropriate training and is now serving in that same capacity as a compliance officer. So simply, Ms. Petty's name has been struck from policy and Carrie Jones has been inserted into those policies. Policy 60, policy number 1616 is a new one. This has to do with staff dress and grooming. It provides similar wording as far as expectations of our staff that we also expect our students to follow as well. So employees come to school, we expect them to be physically neat, clean, and well groomed, to dress in a manner that communicates student pride and physical or personal appearance, be groomed in a way that doesn't disrupt the educational environment, et cetera, et cetera. So things that our staff members do day in and day out already, just putting it into wording for a policy, for a first reading. Policy 2271. This was a new one for me. I wasn't aware of it. It's now a requirement under federal and state law that any child that is 18 years of age and participating in the College Credit Plus program must be registered for selective service. Males, sorry, males, any child 18, any male 18 years of age. So the issues that they were having was kids were 18 years of age, males enrolled in College Credit Plus, weren't made aware through school policy or schools being aware, and then they were getting asked for reimbursement from the federal government for tuition and stuff. So
Isn't that interesting?
it's a new one that I was not aware of. So that, and that says that if they're not a member or registered, that they're responsible for tuition, textbooks, or any fees associated with the classes in which they're enrolled in. So that is policy 2271. Policy 5511, once again, is dress and grooming. A lot of these are just wording that's been struck. If you take a look at it, they struck which and replaced it with that. They struck his or her own and replaced it with the students, which with that. His or her building with at the building. Wholesome attitude towards was struck, etc. So a lot of just word changes in regards to dress and grooming. Policy 5772 with weapons. It now includes, as far as what's considered by state statute, the definition of a weapon in regards to potential disciplinary action for bringing an incendiary device, an explosive, or other objects deemed or defined as dangerous under state law. And it struck explosives. They struck explosives and replaced it with incendiary devices. Policy 6110 is a Treasury Department one. That's one that this segment can talk about.
So 6110 is about grant funds, and really the only change that is made to this policy is the maintenance effort requirement. There's a new maintenance of equity requirement for the federal program will be met in accordance with the requirements of the specific funded program. And that the district shall maintain appropriate documentation and records to substantiate compliance or to justify allowable exceptions, exemptions, or waivers. For those of you that might not know, maintenance effort is required for like IDEA, special education. So whatever you spend in special education one year, you must maintain that same spend next year. There's a few reasons why you can, that number can go down. Like if your enrollment changes and you lose, some high cost kids, or you have some teachers who retire and you hire new teachers in at a lower rate, those kind of things are acceptable. There's an ESSER maintenance effort. Those are not allowable reasons to reduce your cost. So your overall spend in everything has to be maintained. So now they've added a maintenance of equity requirements to participate in the federal program, which is a lot of wonderful additional calculations and documentations, but that's why you have a treasurer. So and then 6114, again, this is just adding, I think you wonder sometimes where they come up with this, but including the thank you, regarding cost incurred for telecommunications and video surveillance services or equipment. So, adding that we're allowed to spend that. And then D, all federally funded contracts in excess of $2,000 related to construction, alteration, repairs, painting, decorating, etc., must comply with the Davis-Bacon prevailing wage requirements. So, they don't really want you doing construction or anything with their funds. So they're making that a little more difficult, $2,000. So you hear in news recently where they're saying they're all doing this HVAC work, so it's prevailing wage. And there's a bid process and things of that nature, so it shoots the cost pretty high, but
So
that's
this
what
won't-
the.
This won't impact our construction
No,
project at all.
no, this is only if you're using those federal
Federal.
dollars for those construction programs. And I think the next one is the same changes about anything over 2,000 for construction, so. Let's see. I don't think there's anything else that was. Yeah, there's credit card changes, that the treasurer will be responsible for the initial issuance, reissuance, and cancellations of district credit cards and shall maintain written procedures and all appropriate records and reports. We pretty much are doing that. There are 2 credit cards in my office under lock and key. Only 2 or 3 of us have access, and you have to sign it out. You have to say why you're using it. We do have written procedures in place. We, those of us that have it have to report if it's lost or stolen. So it's just adding that language to our policy, and we're already doing that. As we look at moving from a credit card system to a purchasing card system, there may be some additional written policies that need to be done, but I think we're pretty much in compliance with this already.
Back to Mr. Burks. Yeah. 7217.
Okay, 7217, once again, it's some additional clarifications or the definition of what is considered a weapon and bringing a weapon on campus. So it strikes explosives and talks about secondary devices again. It also strikes the wording law enforcement personnel, and it gives the right for state or federal agents, to carry weapons on campus for security purposes. Those are the 2 major changes on that policy. And then the last one has to do with food services. A little surprised, being a former special ed person, that Neola is a little bit behind the times with this one. So you don't refer to individuals with disabilities as disabled people. You refer to them as people with disabilities, or a student with disabilities, or a student without disabilities. So it's just a language update and things that should have been probably done 10 years ago on their end. And then the second one had to do with inclusion of some dietary restrictions as far as consumption of cow's milk. Medical certification may not be required. So that was it. The policies that were the first reading this evening.
And we're about to winter 22 update. We have item D for resignation.
Oh, letter D. I didn't know if you guys had questions about the policy.
Anybody wants to take a motion?
That's
So
why I wanted.
I didn't know if we were doing
I
this at
figured
the
we had
end or if we were gonna do everything. We didn't stop for the vote on the other
Okay.
thing either, so I don't know. We can, but whatever.
Yep. where do we
The
go?
policy disposition sheet that I printed out, I see there's, and I don't know, maybe there's been changes, maybe I have an older one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 policies that were on here that weren't up there tonight.
Yeah.
1439, 2370, 0.01, 3216, 4216, 4439.
Yeah, those are always reviewed with myself and the Neola rep. Oftentimes, he walks me through the process. I ask a lot of questions about what those are in regards to. Oftentimes, I rely on Neola to provide guidance. A lot of those conversations are also centered around, for example, one that was eliminated. We had extensive policies on Title 9 and 7. He felt like we didn't need to have additional language with it. We've already got policies that cover those. What are other districts doing that you guys represent? We kind of stay in line as a group of what we accept and those kind of things.
So that would probably answer the other question about the change on the administrative guidelines, taking out the Title IX language on, I forget what policy 20.
Yeah, I asked him, I said, of your districts that you represent, how many are taking it? He said probably 80-20. Most of them are saying we already have policies on 7 and 9. If you want redundant language, we can certainly have it, but we can throw it back in there if you'd like.
Okay, and then the final question, when I received the drafts that we could look through policies and there was a list.
And then we have, so policies recommended for Board of Education, 40.2 winter update.
Mhm.
And then it has the overview, the disposition sheet with all the policies I just read. And then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 legal alerts.
Mhm.
So my question is pertaining to those legal alerts. If one of those does involve a pretty significant possible change to legal issues concerning transgender students
Mhm.
and bathroom policies and such. I just wanted to make sure that that was not going to be part of what we are.
No, I usually don't even, to be honest, I don't read all of those. Those are just opinions from school attorneys of things that they're seeing in the news. Ironically, it happened to be released when we're having the same issue here at Bethel. It wasn't like we requested the information or anything. They're just saying, be on the lookout. These are being litigated. Here's what potentially could come out of it. So
Okay, I was just. I
if you would
didn't know.
look, I think if you would look throughout the updates, there could be some updates where there's some in there. There's going to be some updates where you probably won't see any. So if there was 5 of them, I couldn't even tell you what all 5 were about.
Okay. It was a bit confusing because they did have an appearance of being a proposed policy, so just wanted to make sure that wasn't being
No,
lumped into.
we're not voting on any policies this evening, besides the change from Jody Petty to Carrie Jones.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're all just readings for tonight. And it's just the ones that we've listed here.
And just to echo, when I see those legal alerts, I take them like, when I get those emails from OSBA's legislative folks that say, hey, Senate Bill blah, blah, blah has been proposed, here's what's in it. That's what I read those as, the same thing. I don't take them as any impact on our policy unless it's Norm says, here's a policy we're recommending a change to, the ones that say PO, 2271.
And
That I
that's,
pay attention to.
that's kind of the way I had read it.
Yep, I scroll right past those and go straight to the heavy hitters of the actual policies.
Yeah, the key is look for the PO and then a number.
Right.
If it doesn't have that, then it's not a policy.
Yep.
It's more of just an informational update.
And you'll first see the updates come up and, they'll all say they're just a policy. And then after you know that Mr. Perks has met with them, then some of them will start to say it's rejected, rejected. So if you go out
Yeah, I
now,
did see-
and you'll see that some are rejected, now you know we're not doing those. So,
Okay.
because they don't apply.
And
to
sometimes
all
they're not a
of us.
good fit for the district either.
Right.
Just not. It's still gonna be a controversial topic and we don't. So,
So what will happen with those legal alerts at this point? That's not something we really need to address at this time.
no, because I don't think they're settled court cases. I think there's things that, hey, be on the alert. This is in this circuit court or, and it could be on a variety of topics. Depending upon what the decision is, it could have an impact on you in the future. So if it's litigated and settled and it has an impact, then that's when Normal and their lawyers at Neola will create the draft policy and then they'll present it and then you guys will go through the 2 reading process.
Okay.
Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, that's no
Especially
problem.
for the first time looking through it.
It's a lot.
And if there's questions, I mean, feel free to call Justin and Tina or call John ahead of time. I mean, that's the
I used to
process.
speak with John and OSBA, so yeah, I've asked some of these questions, but I need to get answers from.
Yeah, the 2 biggest firms that districts in Ohio use would either be Neola or OSBA. I'm not saying there's not other companies out there that do it, but I would bet my salary, I would say the majority of districts use those 2.
Or I
You're
can
gonna
call one
probably
of
find
us.
that they're very,
We've been through this a few times, and if we can't answer your questions, we can tell you who to go to.
yeah.
I'm not gonna tell you, I've spent almost no time reading those legal alerts.
Well, I mean, it
Rarely.
does say policies recommended for BOE, so it would lead one to believe that this was something that had been requested at one time or another to be looked at as a potential future policy. I think I spoke with the central office staff person. They said, well, these could be looked at as proposals for, future policy. So it's future. Is that tonight? Is that future?
Right.
These are issues that we're dealing with now.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I think beyond the introductory paragraph where it starts telling you like, this has been proposed and this is coming, I'm sort of like, good to know that topic's coming, I'll watch for that. And often they get into such murky details and go on with all these lengthy opinions
It's
that you're
pretty
sort of
detailed.
like,
It's-
paragraph
yes,
1 and maybe a
detailed.
paragraph at the bottom that summarizes their thoughts. That's enough for me. And then I'm moving to the next legal alert. Okay, there's some more information for me. And until it really hits our policies, there's not much else we can do about it. So it's a sit and wait for those.
And I know you might have seen policy manual, but if you look right here, it says guidance document. Well, guidance is just that, it's not policy.
Yeah, and I did also want to point out, and I don't know if you guys are aware of this, that under under the transgender students, it does say to date, 18 states in the District of Columbia have enacted laws, statutory language and or agency regulations prohibiting discrimination in education on the basis of gender identity. Ohio is not one of them. So I think for us, as we move forward with thinking about policies, this tells us right here, this isn't really something that that pertains to Ohio at this point in time. You had mentioned things changing, waiting to see how they settle. So I did read through all of this several times.
I also think we have a non-discrimination policy that specifically addresses that.
What are you referring to?
It's actually on our webpage. I would have to look at the procedure, but
2260 or 2266 maybe.
and we have a notice of non-discrimination that says the Board of Education does not discriminate on the basis of race, color, national origin, sex, including sexual orientation and transgender identity, disability, age, religion, military status, ancestry, genetic information, or any other legally protected category in its programs and activities, including employment opportunities.
I mean, this is legal opinion. It's got the citations here. So it cites back to footnote 7 if you wanted to take a look at it later. But it's citing, it's basically saying here, there is nothing prohibiting discrimination in education on the basis of gender identity within Ohio, that we would have any guidance that we would have to follow.
We have a policy
So for-
currently in place that allows that specifically
Right,
states.
if the board is choosing to recognize that, that's fine. But what it's saying here is Ohio doesn't have to do that. So that would then be a choice that the board would make, the district would make. And that's what I'm pointing out. And again, if you want to take a look at the citations, there's pages and pages of legal citations here. So.
Further comments, questions, concerns?
On that part,
Okay.
I was thinking on the other things, so.
On the policies?
But that's okay, yeah, but the policies are good, sorry.
All right, thanks for running through all those
Yeah.
policy updates. for
Sorry, I
the
missed about the
first
vote.
reading.
I missed the vote ahead. I didn't
No,
see it
that's
at the top
okay.
of the page,
That's
so I don't know
okay.
how you want to handle
We'll
it.
come back to it. Go ahead, finish what you're doing. Any other concerns about the other policies, weapons, grant funds, all the money stuff? Anything further on that? Okay, sweet. How about IMD?
All right, letter D, we do have a couple of resignations that are on here for review. They'll be on the agenda on the 14th for consideration. First one is Chris Keff, a custodian. Chris came on board with us at the start of when we brought custodial services in 2.5 years ago. He's always had kind of a goal to become an EMT. So good for him. He's been able to finish his certification and his training, and I think he's secured employment there as well. So always like to see people with upward mobility, and glad for him to be able to reach his dream or his goal of becoming an EMT. I'd like to thank him for his service. He served as a second shift custodian. He did a good job for us. So we are currently in need of a second shift custodian if you know anybody who's looking to do that. So we try to get it out on various social media outlets to let people know that it's available. About every school in the area is looking for custodians. So I think we're all fighting for the same people. And then Tiffany Pikus, kindergarten aide. Tiffany served as a kindergarten aide this year. She's also currently our softball coach. I think she would prefer to go back and be a substitute teacher and have a little bit more flexibility on when she selects days that she wants to work. So once again, she did a great job in the district, and we're looking forward to having her as a sub next year because subs are hard to find as well. So we use her quite a bit with her educational experience and background. So thank her for her service as well. And then letter E is review of Chromebook and technology purchase. Thanks to Jason Cook, our technology director, for being in attendance this evening. I asked him to kind of come and walk you through his thought process on kind of what he's thinking about with technology plan for next year, replacement rotations, the quotes that he secured, why he is recommending who he's recommending, and what his plan is in the future as far as rotation of devices and also staff devices as well. So thank you, Jason, for being here.
So I wrote out the proposal, and it's basically exactly as I would put, that we haven't really had a rotation cycle in the past here for Chromebooks, and proof of that is that we have about 500 to 600 that are going to be end of life coming this summer. that should not happen if you have a rotation cycle that is 4 or 5 years and you're getting rid of them before they are at end of life. Reason being, you keep that up to date with the state testing software, security, and basically anything else that you would need for any other apps. So we're starting, this is our first year of really starting a full rotation cycle. We're gonna looking at the oldest first, which currently is the kindergarten through 2nd grade. They have, my understanding is traditionally, everything's been hand-me-downs. It's been get the oldest ones, new ones, and then hand them down to everyone else. I don't think that that's right, because then kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, and all those grades are never getting new devices. So we actually looked at a Chrome tablet this year. That's a touch device that's fairly similar to Kindle Fire or an iPad that they were actually able to play with for a couple days. They said that it was amazing, that I was able to get a demo unit in and actually play around with it. They even had one of the students who is, lack of a better word, is a little squirrely. And I don't know exactly what the whole situation was with that student, but I know that his test scores almost doubled when he was using a touch device as opposed to a traditional Chromebook. So I then took it from kindergarten to 1st grade and proposed the same type of scenario, but I proposed with them having it be a transition device into a traditional laptop, traditional computer. So the kindergarten device, it's the same tablet for both. The kindergarten one will have a kickstand, rugged kickstand case that's got a nice thick bumper on it in case it gets dropped. But there's no keyboard. There is the on-screen keyboard, and we will also be purchasing, I didn't put that in the proposal, but we'll be purchasing one set of 30 keyboards that will plug in just in case the need arises for them to do keyboarding. For 1st grade, we're going to do a rugged keyboard case that actually has a touch pad on it and a keyboard, a full keyboard. They can also then still use the screen to touch as well. The teachers even tested this with iReady, and it is iReady is touch compatible, so they're able to drag and click on things with the touch device. And then 2nd grade will be getting the Dell 3100 traditional clamshell laptop Chromebook, which is the exact same one that was purchased last year. I did get 3 quotes. I tried getting actually 5. I reached out to 5 vendors. And one of them gave me a half a quote. I don't want to get into that. And then the other one was about the same as the SHI one. So that is, I'm recommending K-12 Tech. They're only about $2,000 more than the cheapest one, but we do a lot of recycling and basically getting rid of our old technology with them. And they also will cover our devices at a discount for the next year as well. Are there any questions? You can, if you want to pull up the quote just so they can see a breakdown of prices. All right.
That's all right. So just get hungry.
The nice thing about the tablets too is they are actually like half the price of a traditional Chromebook as well. Even with adding on the cases, they're still significantly less. They're still almost half the price. So they're a really, really nice device. I still have a demo unit. I'm gonna give it back unless it went back today. But I still have that up in my office. It's very nice, very responsive touch device. Any questions on that?
When will they be shipped?
I don't know because it's dependent on getting the quote.
I didn't know
Yeah.
if there was a backlog still.
So I did talk from multiple vendors, I did hear that the tablet is a very hot device, so getting it in sooner than later is good. There is a decent amount of stock of the 3100s, so I'm fingers crossed, I'm hoping to get these like June,
Awesome.
so we'll have them ready to go.
Great.
Yeah.
Just a question, so the 200 quantity is, I read the 10%.
Yes.
So are you expecting, I mean, our count's gonna be about 180 students in kindergarten?
So
Second grade?
Yeah. Basically, what I did for kind of even numbers and everything was I estimated we have 6 classes in each one of those classes, 6 teachers in each one of those classes. Each one will be getting 30, so it is 180. That allows for if there's, oh, this one didn't work today, they can grab another one real quick, and then they can bring that down to the tech office and we can swap it with another. So there's actually only gonna be about 20 extras in addition, like to a full classroom set. And that's enough that we can maybe give some to the Young 5 program, we can give some to special ed if they need them, because a lot of special ed programs use the touch devices, they have their own sets of devices there. And then it also allows for this type of situation where maybe there's a couple that are broken and they're out and we need to pull some from the storage to make sure we got enough. Yeah.
And the instructor can model as well. They'll
Yes.
have hopefully one in their room where they can walk the students through
Yeah.
things as they go when new programs come up.
So you said this was the first year to start the full rotation cycle. Is that 4-year cycle? 5 years?
Yes, 4 years. We'll be doing about 3 grades every year.
Thank you.
Any questions from the board?
I was just gonna ask one more question. I was curious, the high number from the SHI, I'm just curious, was it was the licensing fee more expensive then, or was it?
No, so vendors, when you reach out to vendors, they either have stuff in stock, they have to get it from the manufacturer directly, or going through other channels, other suppliers. So because I've been doing this and I've been talking, and I've worked with my previous district as well on purchases like this. It's all dependent on that, and it's dependent on what price they bought it at, if they have it in stock. For example, I'm trying to say, the company that I got half a quote back for whatever reason, they had 10,000 of the tablets in stock, but they were actually charging, I think $150, as opposed to they were charging $100. So that's probably because they bought them at that kind of that higher price. So that is why you get so many different quotes, is because everybody has different suppliers and vendors and all that's different thing. Yeah. So that's usually the discrepancy.
Thanks, just because it was 20,000 more.
Sure.
It was significant.
No, I understand. I was blown away too. I'm like, oh, this one's pretty competitive, and this one, why is this one so high? And yeah, if you look at it, and I can get that to you if you want, but yeah, basically everything was more.
Thank you. I know that Mrs. Reese had asked, just for your thoughts,
Sure.
questions about like Apple touchscreen type items
Sure.
for the young ones. And then also if you could comment on choosing a 4-year versus a 5-year cycle.
Sure.
Those are your follow-up questions, right?
So the Apple devices is a big discussion, and I'll kind of give the highlights of that. If you talk to anyone in education or in technology, everybody kind of has the same feeling on Apple, where it's extremely difficult to manage. And the reason being is Apple doesn't really make a good management console. They don't make a good management device. They don't make the tablets or even like the Mac computers capable of being managed centrally. That wasn't the design of Apple. That wasn't their philosophy in the first place. Their philosophy was standalone devices. So Apple is in the, like, they're trying to shoehorn in that management technology, but it's still not there. And I don't want to say because I don't want to deal with it. That's not the reason. The reason is because that piece of the puzzle is not there. It makes it difficult to put security policies on it. It makes it difficult to monitor it. It makes it difficult to do all of these different things. Is it impossible? No, there are means to go about it. But when you have a mixed environment like that, it makes it much, much, much more difficult. That being said, the price is also significantly higher. Tablets, iPads are usually $300 to $500, where you can see $100 to $200. So you're doubling or tripling the price as well in addition to that. Another example too is because the tablets are so app-based, you can lock down that store and that's fine, but for education, there really isn't a need for the additional apps outside of just a web browser. And in addition to that, there is an Android option on the Chrome tablets that would allow us to add those exact same apps if we needed to in a future date to make them act exactly like iPads. So that's kind of the Apple thing, just touching on that real quick. As far as she also mentioned the Windows devices for the older kids. Kind of in a similar mindset where there's too much in a Windows computer for what they need. But for the most part, a student needs basically a word processor as well as some other apps. But 90% of what they do is web-based anyway. And I know the older kids aren't using iReady, but you have things like that where you have assessment tools, you have like subscription-based books and things like that. Everything's all web-based. So getting something that is a Windows environment and giving it to a high schooler is like giving a high schooler a Camaro as their first car. It's a little bit overkill, I think. That being said, there are schools that do it and they do it well. We could do it well too, but there's just not really a need for that right now. They do have the option to take the classes at in the computer lab. They have the options. We have the STEM program as well. Computers from Miami Valley Career Tech. So they have those options as well. And then the 4-year cycle versus 5-year cycle. 5-year cycle is fine. I have no issues with it. It just made it easy for dividing by 12. I mean, that's gonna be, I'm gonna be honest. I mean, 4 divided by 12 is 3, and that makes it pretty easy to just chunk it up into 3 grades a year. So.
Does it make a difference from the treasury standpoint?
No, I think- Yeah, we spoke, Mr. Perks and I spoke to Jason about coming up with a replacement plan, what our rotation will be, what will those anticipated costs will be, so that we can sort of be proactive and be ready and making those purchases as they happen, rather than sort of reactive and going, oh my goodness, we have to get this in front of the board and we have to do it now. So we're trying to put together a plan like that. And I think, for you, as long as we're aware of what's coming down, you have time to prepare. I think it's a good idea
So
to
the fact
have.
that there's some money that can be used on things that last 5 years.
Yes.
Like, we're not concerned from your perspective.
Yeah, I know it sort of limits your, it has a lifespan of more than 5 years, right?
It does. Usually they're right now, they're around 6.
6, right, so you
but
can
also-
still use permanent improvement dollars.
Yes.
It's just our plan is going to rotate them in 4 years. We're
We don't
not,
have to connect those two
no,
at
you do
all.
not
So
have,
can
as
still
long
use
as they
PI.
have a lifespan of more,
Correct.
at 5 years or more, you can still use permanent improvement. And we're not chucking them out the window at
Right.
4 years. They're being, used somewhere else
Or
or.
resold, because, and that
Right.
was part of the other thing with the 4-year cycle versus 5-year cycle is you can resell them
Resell.
with knowing there's 2 years left on them versus 1 year or no years where you're just basically checking those for parts. So that's the other key to the 4-year cycle. That way, instead of just spending a whole, $117,000, you're spending 117,000, but then you're getting like, I don't know, 20, 50,000 of that back when you resell the old ones.
Have we considered a tech fee where students can take their Chromebooks with them after 4 years?
I would love to do that because,
Wonder where I thought of
yeah, that's something that I've considered, and we can discuss that further.
Like for a fee.
Yeah.
obviously, like you pay a little bit
Yeah.
and earn it.
If you need samples, I have some from previous.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Mhm.
so that's definitely something that I
If
would
Students are
be,
contributing to that cost.
Yeah.
That would be excellent for us. to
Something
know.
that I've heard, I'm not speaking on behalf of Mr. Cook, but from experience, and I know some people will shy away from it because it's additional costs on families, but I think it strongly should be considered to have families purchase insurance on our devices as well. Because right now they get thrown in the back of a pickup truck and they get broke and the district foots the bill for it.
Yeah.
So a lot of districts have an insurance policy that students participate in.
I hate to be able to replace the screen myself.
I-
So, it has happened. And rightfully so,
Yeah.
It's what it is, but I mean, I know I've worked in a district before where students for, their 2 years, we've, did well and met your program requirements and whatever, you could pay, pay your tech fee in addition to other fees and you take your Chromebook.
Yeah.
So it could be a potential.
Well, last district, we
program.
had a buyback or I should say buyout program where when they were leaving their senior year, their laptop. A lot of times the tech department would look at it and say $5. It's your, you know what I mean? It wasn't,
Sure.
but for some of those kids, it got them through a year or two of college and had a lot of their materials on it.
Absolutely.
We weren't going to reutilize it at the school, but they may want to take it with them to wherever they're going.
And if that's our cycle is 4 years, it could coincide quite nicely.
Yep.
This is my point.
Yeah.
If our theory is that we're getting rid of them for 4 years, why would we not find a way to make that work?
Yep.
So just a thought. Okay. Other questions about Chromebook technology, other things? Okay, so we need to go back up to the technical changes for board policies where our only change being made to those policies is replacing Ms. Petty with Carrie Jones. Correct. Okay, and there are how many policies?
Like 13.
They're all sort of like.
Yeah, they really are. They're all, it's just compliance officer name change is all it is. Mr. Swope has been consistent throughout and we're changing the name of our secondary.
We asked today, Neola, if we could just do position like high school principal, elementary principal, but the feds require a specific name.
Okay.
So every
I thought that
time-
was interesting. You can say treasurer and superintendent. You don't have to name Mr. Purple, Mrs. Hageman,
Right.
but you have to name them. So, yeah, we try,
Because
yeah.
the course has to be completed, is that why?
They do coursework. I
Yeah.
mean, if you look on our webpage underneath district, there'll be like Title IX compliance. And it'll have those two names listed. And then I think it has like 6 or 7 videos that they have to watch to be considered a compliance officer.
Oh, there you have it. Okay. So is there a motion to approve the change from Ms. Petty to Ms. Jones as our compliance officer on those policies? Thank you, Mr. Elam. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Donahue. All right. Ms. Hageman, whenever you're ready, will you please call the vote?
Sure, Mr. Elam,
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue,
Yes.
Mrs. France,
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian.
Yes. But change carries with a vote of 5-0. Thank you. Yeah. Heidi's up that, it's been honestly out there for a while. Mr. Burke, superintendent items for discussion.
Yeah, just to kind of give you guys an update, looking at next year, since I arrived, most of our positions that we've added, the majority have been out of necessity. And it's enrollment based. And so through our personnel meetings with principals and discussions with curriculum director, et cetera, we are looking at a couple of positions for next year based on, first off, special ed numbers. So an intervention specialist at the middle school. The idea behind that would be to offer not only inclusion, which is when the special ed teacher is in the traditional classroom setting, working with all kids. If it works well, you go in there and you really don't know who the instructor is and who the special ed teacher is. So that's an inclusionary model, but it's also a time, it's important to have a resource type setting as well, where kids can, during study hall, go visit with a special ed teacher in a small group setting and get small group or even one-on-one attention. So we're looking at a middle school intervention specialist. At the high school level, as our higher numbers move up through the ranks and enter that area of the building, we're looking at adding an additional social studies teacher, which will also meet the newly required, let me retract that. Social studies teacher to meet enrollment numbers, and then also a math teacher. The math teacher will assist with the newly required financial literacy component. The state of Ohio used to be able to sneak the financial literacy component into your government instruction and your economics to the degree, but now they're saying you actually have to offer a class and every student has to take it as part of graduation requirements. So that math teacher will assist with financial literacy. They'll also assist with that applied algebra class that we talked about to give kids an additional math credit to help those students that, like me, that weren't math strong. So that's kind of what we're looking at. A couple of areas that we'll also potentially need to have some discussion with, and we're going to need to do some more work on our end. One of the areas that Mrs. Hageman and I have had discussions about was currently with Mrs. Rhodes retiring. Right now, we currently have an EMIS/transportation director. God bless her soul, that's probably the most daunting task in the whole district, especially when you're dealing with transportation development, routing, how Carriage Trails constantly adds new streets and new houses. And then also trying to deal with EMIS, which is essentially how we receive all of our financial component. As a district, we think we're getting to a point where we may need to split that position in some way, shape, or form. So have somebody who's solely dedicated to EMIS, which is a full-time job in itself, and then maybe looking at some sort of a position combined with a transportation director. I know in the past, the district has had some discussions on maybe looking at an assistant principal for the middle school and high school to assist with disciplinary stuff, and then maybe tying that in with transportation as well. I'm not saying that's what we're doing. I'm just throwing ideas out there as we continue to add more students and people take on more responsibility. And maybe Mrs. Hagan can talk about the EMIS portion, because a lot of times, although I sign off on EMIS, she does have a lot more direct impact. I shouldn't say impact. She has a lot more direct involvement with Gail with how things are coded and that kind of stuff. So maybe she can talk about maybe the reasoning on why they split that position too.
I mean, I don't know how Gail does it, to be frank. I mean, you know, she's in the office early in the morning, when most of us are still asleep, and then she's on a bus, and then she's back in the office, and then she's out again on a bus, and I couldn't keep, I mean, I've never seen that. Yeah, sometimes he's in the cafeteria. So, you know, I've never seen that combination usually.
I think it worked when Bethel was much smaller.
Smaller.
And transportation wasn't an issue because routes weren't changing that much from year to year.
Right.
When it was more of just the township setting with the plat and all the houses, and having lived down there for a couple of years, it's like, where did Blue Flower come from? That's the street. Like, it didn't
Right,
pop up,
right.
and it's amazing when she looks, and then she has to reroute, and this bus got full because 18 houses went up this summer, and then the whole route. It's a pretty daunting task in a district our size. They have software routing out there for but that's for districts that don't constantly add, and so the Google Maps doesn't keep up with it. So you spend $4,000 or $5,000 for a software package that doesn't apply to here. It's great for a district like Fort Laramie, where I came from, but it doesn't work here because there wasn't any growth up there. The same 1,800 people live there their whole life. So
Right, so you're looking at a lot of changes in transportation and there are a lot of changes in requirements for EMIS. The joke is always, you know, what are they gonna ask us to track and report on now? How many kids named Billy wore blue socks, you know? So there's just a lot of data that has to go up and be reported. It used to be you could do head count the first week of October and that was your funding for the entire year. I might be dating myself a little bit because I've been doing this for a while, but now it's a constant changing number that's updated on a regular basis. And in most districts, you know, across the state, you're looking at numbers that are declining. So we don't know where our kids are going. It's like the opposite. Ours, you know, we're only one of 4 that are seeing the kind of growth that we're seeing. And those 2 areas is where it has the most impact in your EMIS, your student enrollment, and your transportation. You've got one fabulous person doing that, that's leaving. But I don't think that that can remain a 1-person job. You know, so I would like to look at the possibility of having a full-time EMIS person because that is directly related to how many dollars we get in the district and how we code things. And, you know, should this be a career tech class and should we get career tech funding for that and blah, blah, blah. And being able to do that, you would need a full-time person to sort of drill down. And as you get more and more kids, it's going to be a necessity rather than, you know, just a want at this point.
We heard this 4 years ago when Julie and I was first got on the board. And ever since then.
Yeah, and she has officially tendered her retirement letter. So, you know, as we move forward, it's going to be hard to find, you know, those positions. They're hard to fill. But, you know, the sooner we can do that, the better. But, you know, I agree with Mr. Burks. I really think that is a position that we're going to just split up.
And even though probably most people in the community may not be aware that EMIS position is probably one of the most important positions in the district, because if it's not coded right, we don't get funding.
Right.
And you've said that kind of, but I just want to reiterate that. I know historically, yeah, it's, you miss a box and you lose tens of thousands of dollars potential.
Right.
And finding a good EMIS person
So
is
it is crucial.
quite difficult, but it's also quite difficult. Because often when they get in their district and they know their district and their students, you know, get them to shift and change, and when it comes to someone else, it's also incredibly difficult. So it'll be a search. It's not gonna be easy, so probably the sooner we start.
Yeah, are you gonna
better.
put that
That's
out
where we
this
decide to
month
go.
or next?
Well,
or-
that was like, I guess, I can't speak for Mr. Burks. We would need the board's direction on how they want to go with that if we're gonna do. It's gonna be hard to find a part-time EMIS person. You know, so, you know, do we post it as a full-time EMIS position if with the board's, you know, okay, and then we can look at how we're gonna handle the transportation part.
We need to have a conversation about salaries as well.
Mhm.
So
That's why I said we're gonna be doing some homework. I mean,
Yeah.
I have some ideas as far as, like from the county and what assistant principals look like, but we've only received a couple of schools, and that was my fault for asking, today about, some other positions. So we still need to get some salary in that.
So when you're ready.
Right.
we'll have that session.
You know,
I mean, it makes sense.
I would for sure expect to have at least numbers for you guys to look at. I can send them to you via email to your review within the next couple of days. But it was just to kind of put that on your radar, things to think about. And
Any
then,
other personnel changes?
no, and then number 8 is obviously that sheriff's department contract, which I provided previously, and we've indicated some of the challenges that it presents with that first year increase. And then years 2 and 3 are fairly traditional in increases, but that's going to need some decisions being made by the collective 5 of you as far as what are your thoughts on which direction you want to go in.
Can't remember where our last follow-up conversation was on that.
I think the last time was just, I presented numbers and gave you the chart, and
Yeah.
we expressed some of the concerns with that first year, and then they talked a little bit about, you know, they've kind of taken the onus as far as paying for training and the vehicle and the weapon and that kind of stuff. And then also, obviously, like everywhere else, there's salary and insurance increases, which is why they've not really raised it previously, but had a significant the first year. That's coming from from them when I've asked those questions.
Mrs. Sebastian, did you say you had spoken with folks at the county level to see if there was any opportunity for them to use any of their ESSER funds or anything like that to help us with it? And the answer to that was big no, right? Because they said
Yeah.
they'd be spread too thin with all the other county schools as well, right?
And they said they've had the same issues. They've had to bump their salaries up to keep staff. I mean, it's like everywhere else, salaries are increasing. So there's unfortunately not money there. And just like locally in this personnel in the township and probably the city of Huber, they got half a pay. And so that bumped the salaries at least once or twice. So the combination of that and just having to adjust to keep people is putting a strain on them. So, yeah.
So does anyone have any questions or anything further we need to ask Mr. Perks to follow up on or anything else?
Well, I did want to just follow up on, were you able to ask any question about if we had a SRO in the second or in the new building, if there were to be any discount break or anything like that?
They said they would have that discussion once we kind of get to that. They haven't.
Haven't.
Yeah,
Ever.
he kind of said probably about this time next year,
Okay.
we'll want to have those discussions. But he also indicated there's other neighboring districts that, now it's up to your personal choice as a district. He said there's some districts that only have one person spread out over multiple buildings. I'm not saying that's
Yeah.
what Bethel needs to do and that's what's best for Bethel. But he said that's an option too. If you're worried about potential increase in costs. It is relatively close. I mean, it's not ideal, but we could also certainly look at 2 and maybe we could get a 2 for a discounted price.
Thank you for
I
asking.
won't say 2 for 1, but I'll say 2 for a discounted price.
I'm sure it definitely would not.
No, it would not be too
Thanks for asking.
Yeah, that's no problem.
We'll deal with those security situations when the time comes, making a plan. Okay, anything further on that? Because if not, I'm thinking we'll probably have to put that on for a vote. I think at our March 14th meeting. Does that sound reasonable to everyone? Okay, all right. Does anyone have need for an executive session? I think I wanted to talk about, I was right. Briefly, item 1, and then quickly, item 6. So item 1 for appointment, employment dismissal items, and then item 6, quick security. Anything else from anyone else? Do we have a motion to go into executive session then for item 1 and item 6? Thank you, Lori. Is there a second? Thank you, Danny. Okay, board move, sorry, Ms. Hagan, can you call the roll, please?
Jeez. Mrs. Mansfield.
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue.
Yes.
Mrs. France.
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian.
Yes.
Mr. Elam.
Yes.
Board move into executive session at 7:58 p.m. Thank you all for your attendance. Appreciate your patience with us. Have a lovely evening. Oh, yeah, no, there'll be no vote after the executive session. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cook, for all of your information. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Very informative.
Well, I'm.
I know, I did notice it getting cold tonight. I didn't have. Well,
Usually.
I wore thicker pants, but I didn't. She was here when we met with the township. before.
Would be doing just a blanket insurance on that and doing, because then the kids have a tendency to just be like,